A soft glow rises where the day falls away. Above the western rim, Venus hangs like a bright bead sewn into dusk. The sky is a silk field. The planet is a pinprick clock, holding the last light a little longer than it should. Winds from the sun comb the thin clouds of our upper atmosphere. Streetlights blink on. In the quiet between those lights and the distant star, a narrator's voice settles. We are running out of time to decode an anomaly wrapped in clouds. Arrays of telescopes come alive across the Earth desert dishes. Mountain domes, a shipboard scope that hums as waves thread beneath it. They listen not for thunder or voice, but for a long, drawn tone that is older than cities. Some telescopes watch the bright face of Venus itself, measuring how it brightens and dims as if the planet were breathing. Others tilt a measure above, tracking the space around it, the corridor where dust and charged particles drift. These machines do not judge. They collect. They collect the shimmer of starlight, the cough of solar wind, the quick scratch of micrometeor ash. They collect and they wait. In dim, cool rooms, spectrographs split that light into lines. The lines look simple, crisp bands, narrow bars, but each one speaks. Hydrogen hums here. Carbon whispers there. Sulfur, sodium, oxygen, each taking a seat on a long bench of the visible and the unseen. Tonight, a few of those lines tremble. Not much, just enough to nudge a pencil. The pattern they sketch is forbidden, or at least unexpected in a cradle of silence. It says, something is moving in a way that does not fit. An orbit that leans. A wind that turns where it should not. If you're listening as you drift towards sleep, that's why these stories exist. Subscribe and share where you are and what time it is. I read them New York at midnight, London before dawn, Sydney at noon like stars across the earth. In the control room, the lead researcher, her voice steady. Her thoughts mapping routes like a pilot remembers the first time she saw Venus through a backyard telescope. It was an evening star then, a clear crescent, bright enough to make a child gasp. She remembers how the crescent seemed to float, a little boat on a dark sea. Years later, she learned that Venus shines so fiercely because its clouds are a pale armor, bouncing sunlight away. Tonight, those same clouds are not armor at all. They are a veil. Behind them, a shadow drifts where no shadow should be. The teen checks the instruments again. Is it heat from the sensor? A misaligned slit? A tiny thread of ice inside the optics? They test, cleanse, correct. The tremble persists. In the data, it looks like a heartbeat skip. Return, skip folded into the spectrum as if the light itself remembers something. They try a second telescope 1,000 miles away. The second sees the same tremble, then a third, then a satellite sensor riding in night over the Pacific. A pattern emerges. The anomaly crosses instruments, latitudes, even languages. What one scientist calls a signature, another calls a messenger. What one labels a nuisance, another calls an omen. Outside, the night is simple. The planet is bright. The crickets practice their saws, and an airplane draws a straight line out of a city. But the solar wind is not simple. It sighs along a drifting shadow, as if tracing the edges of a moving hull. The shadow is not a ship. It is not even a thing. It is a shape written in charged particles and light delays, sketched by gravity and the way dust falls through sunlight. If one could hold it, it would crumble like ash. But written across weeks of watching, it becomes a trajectory. It loops near Venus, leans a degree off the expected line, and seems to nudge a path that wraps, like thread, around the planet's relentless orbit. In the lab, the researchers replay old data. Past nights return like dream fragments. Here is a murmur from 2 winters ago, when the sky was crystal and the temperature bit through gloves. Here is an echo from a summer storm, when thunder made the dishes quiver and a grad student fell asleep. head on the panel, cheek warm against the hum. The anomaly is there too fainter, easy to miss, but present, like a face you only recognize when someone says the name. They stack the timelines. They draw lines through the lines. A curve appears patient, ancient, almost kind. An ancient traveler of data, that is how one of them describes it. Not a rock, not a comet, not an asteroid hiding in the glare. This traveler is made of information and timing, its body a braid of arrival and delay. It arrives early by seconds, late by others, always within a narrow beat that the instruments can feel. A faint echo asking for reply? No one says the word signal. Not yet. Not with careers in the room and years of training against wishful thinking. They say anomaly, pattern, rhythm. Still, the room is full of quiet hope that is hard to hide. Venus, in the meantime, keeps her face. Clouds roll east to west, faster than a jet stream, thick with sulfuric acid droplets that catch the sunlight and fling it away. Lightning flickers inside that veil like shy lanterns. The planet's surface barely seen bakes under a sky that presses like stone. None of that explains this rhythm. None of that explains the way the spectrograph lines tremble in step, like reeds lifting in a single breath. Some say the anomaly might be the dance of dust drawn by gravity, each grain a tiny lens bending starlight. Others wonder if the solar wind, draped over Venus's magnetic wake, can ring like a bell. The models run through the night. They produce maps made of colors, gradients spilling across screens like slow auroras. You, listening in the dim, can imagine the maps as weather, but for space. High-pressure bands of charged particles, low-pressure eddies where the wind folds back on itself. A corridor opens beside Venus, a place where streams meet and cancel. In that corridor, a shadow flows. It carries no light of its own. It is only absence, only delay, yet it moves with purpose, the way a river seems to know the rocks. The telescopes cannot see the shadow directly. They watch how starlight bends and how lines in the spectrum quiver, the way a leaf's trembling says a breeze has passed. By morning, the team has a set of possibilities. Natural, they argue first. A comet's thin tail, invisible in the glare, shearing through the wake. A swarm of micrometeors, caught and stretched into a filament, like a necklace broken and spilled, then gathered by gravity's hand. These would be beautiful answers. They would also be easy to model and prove. But the heartbeat remains too steady. Its period holds. It skips repeat on a time that seems to adjust itself, as if responding to the flick of the solar wind, the angle of Earth, the tilt of Venus. It is not speech. It does not carry words. Yet it behaves like a thing that listens as well as speaks. They test that too. Near midnight the following evening, a radio dish sends a gentle pulse toward the corridor. Not loud, not reckless, just a soft nudge of energy, like tapping the surface of a pond with one fingertip. Minutes pass. The room watches the graph. The heartbeat does not change. Then, after a patient interval, it shifts by a fraction of a second, like a sleeper turning on a pillow. Someone laughs quickly, then covers their mouth. Someone else writes the time down twice and checks the clock on the wall as if the clock might be the one that is wrong. What message sleeps inside this luminous haze? The question is not a headline in the lab. It is a quiet thought shared between number checks and coffee. If there is a message, it is carved in delay and drift. It could be the work of ice and dust, of pressure and geometry, the universe doing what it does best, drawing patterns that look like purpose, then asking us to be wise. Or it could be a messenger in the strict sense, a harbinger routed along orbits and winds to reach a technical mind at a human desk. If so, what is the clock? The planet itself? The star? The way our instruments blink at a steady rate, becoming part of the rhythm they measure? Outside, dawn folds into the horizon. Venus fades still bright, but the blue deepens and the city begins to rise in sound. Trucks on the highway, a bicycle bell, a kettle. The team steps out and blinks at the ordinary world. A red-tailed hawk turns slow circles above the parking lot. Clouds edge the mountains with a pale line. It is easy to forget, in this normal light, that a quiet conversation has begun at the edge of sight. But the feeling remains, the fragile awe that arrives when something unexplained sits in your hands. They carry that awe back inside like a candle cupped against wind. They will examine the cadence of the heartbeat across orbits, measure how it drifts as Venus moves around the sun and as Earth tilts through seasons. They will compare it to the times of known comets, to the dusty wakes of near-Earth asteroids, to the soft static of the heliospheric breeze. They will look for a key that turns the riddle into a simple lock. Here is the cause. Here is the effect. Here is the end. Yet a part of them, of all who watch, hopes the lock stays strange a little longer. Wonder is a fuel that burns clean. It keeps people up late, then lets them rest well. For now, the narrative holds steady. A bright world burning under thick clouds. A clock set above the evening star. Telescopes listening to a corridor of moving shadow. Light split into careful lines that tremble with a rhythm no one asked for. If it is a natural song, it will teach us new music of wind and field. If it is a messenger, it is a gentle one, patient as dusk. Either way, the question has been planted like a seed, and the room around it grows quiet when anyone leans too close. Night will return, and with it the soft glow over the horizon, the gentle veil of Venus, the arrays turning their faces to the sky. The instruments will breathe, the data will flow, and another small skip will ETCH itself into the pattern. The world will look the same to anyone not listening. But for those who are, the air will seem charged with a faint promise, like the hush before a distant bell. The glow will fade into the horizon, but in its fading, it will carry a question that lingers in every watcher's mind. And in the drifting quiet, one could almost sense that another secret is about to reveal itself. The camera glides in slow and steady, as if carried by a warm breath. A pale world fills the frame. Venus wears a crown of cloud, a fortress of light and shadow. Every wall of that fortress is stitched from sulfuric acid droplets, tiny mirrors drifting in endless wind. They catch the sun and smear it into a soft glow, like a brush stroke across an ivory sky. The world below remains hidden, but the air itself becomes the stage. Here, sound is a pressure wave. Here, light is a rumor passing from droplet to droplet. Here, even silence is weight. The sensors come alive with a hum. Their hands are patient. A spectrograph opens its throat and listens, peeling light into threads and reading the threads like letters. Each stripe holds a story: temperature, motion, chemistry. The instrument does not hurry. It listens the way a tide listens to the moon, forever aware, forever calm. Far above the clouds, a small orbiter traces its elegant path. An orbit that lines up and leans, then tightens as Venus approaches perihelion, the nearest sweep to the sun. Down in the electronics, numbers begin to ripple in a pattern that feels like a heartbeat. It is not the first time. The data knows the route. Past cycles show a gentle rise and fall, repeating close to that warm turn of orbit. As the sunlight strengthens, the clouds answer with a faint and curious note. The anomaly is soft. It does not leap or shout. It drifts in like a whisper that makes you turn your head. The spectrograph does not blink. It holds the line and keeps listening. Memory returns in metal voices. Once, the Venera landers fell like brave seeds through this yellow-white sky. Their shells were thick. Their hearts were hot. They survived minutes, then spoke of a crushed horizon, stones like dark loaves, and winds that never stop. Cameras blinked in the thick air, then dimmed. The Pioneer Venus probes came later. They tasted sulfur, felt lightning, and traced the curve of a pressure so heavy it could fold steel. Magellan followed, not through cloud, but by radar, mapping the surface with a patient scan. Mountains rose in ghost gray. Lava plains spread like the pages of a sealed book. Each mission left a note in the margins of that book. We were here. We felt the heat. We heard the sky. Those notes never quite explained the quiet ripple seen now, near perihelion. Yet they shaped the questions. Was it always there? Was it buried in the roar of super-rotating winds, those gales that outrun the planet's day and night? At the cloud tops, the wind circles the globe in a few days, racing like a river pulled tight around the world. Down deep, the air thickens and slows, turning from gas to weight, from weight to almost sea. The fortress is not still. It is a living wall, and it moves. Instruments sweep their gaze from the bright limb of Venus inward. Starlight that passes through the hazy edge becomes a message. When a star flickers behind the planet, the spectrograph drinks that thin light and measures how the air bends it. The bending tells of layers, droplets, and dust. Sometimes the bending also tells of motion. A drift in the middle heights where sulfuric clouds float like countless pale balloons. Tonight, the drift lines up with the sun again, as if something in the air stirs to the extra warmth. The change is small. It sits just above the noise. But it sits there again and again, like the quiet footstep of a familiar traveler. The camera tilts and descends, not in speed, but in feeling. The cloud deck thickens. Shadows gain texture. In the light of the sun, scattered to milk, you could almost read a page laid against the sky if you had the patience to wait. Lightning has been seen here, a flash painting shapes for a fraction of a second. But the spectrograph is not chasing a flash. It is chasing a rhythm. The rise and fall keeps time with the orbit, and the orbit keeps time with the sun. Past discoveries tell their part in the old tense. Scientists once found that the clouds form and fall like rain that never reaches rock droplets growing, falling and evaporating again, building the sea without a shore. They learned that sulfuric acid forms from sunlight, striking sulfur dioxide and water, a chemistry lesson written in the air. They heard that the winds above turn faster than the planet spins, a strange race called superrotation. They mapped heat that escapes in long, patient waves, like sighs too low to hear. All these things are true. All are natural. Yet the new pattern sends a small question across the data. Is this another natural beat, or is it something else? Some unexplained reply to the sun's approach. The narrator's voice softens. He wonders without pressing, as one wonders about an old song. Can patterns dream? Can a world that turns in thick silence remember a touch and answer later? The question drifts across the cloud fields, not to demand, but to invite. You, listening in your own quiet room, may feel the room expand, as if the ceiling turned clear and the stars pressed closer. You may feel the curve of orbit under your thoughts, the way a boat feels the tide. The scene follows the arc of daylight across the cloud tops. There is no blue here. The light is golden and heavy, crushed and spread by the sulfuric veil. Where the sun grazes the limb, a ring of glow appears, gentle and soft, bending through miles of droplets. If the anomaly is a messenger, this is where it travels along the pale corridors where light, heat, and motion share a narrow hall. The spectrograph sifts those corridors for a signature. It paints graphs that look like hills in the mist. On each pass near perihelion, the hills lean the same way. The lean is small, like the tilt of a head when someone hears their name spoken from another room. Engineers check the instruments. They remember past ghosts, a sensor that warms a little when the sun glances off a panel, a cable that hums to a quiet vibration. They subtract those ghosts one by one. The curve remains. On the ground, A small team watches pallid lines climb a dark screen. The lines are not beautiful in the usual way, but they hold beauty the way a lullaby holds hope. If the curve is a natural rhythm, perhaps it comes from waves moving through the middle clouds, gravity waves that rise where slopes and heat push air upward. Perhaps droplets change size with sunlight, shifting, scattering just enough to sing in the spectrograph's ear. These are honest ideas. They rest gently in the room. Another idea floats in, shy but bright. Venus has been brushed by comets in the long past, and dust sometimes drifts from space like soft ash. Could there be an ancient traveler of air, a faint ring of particles circling in step with sunlight, stirring just at perihelion, then falling back to quiet? The thought is part memory, part dream. It asks for no proof tonight. It only asks to be considered, like a story you tuck away and visit again when the wind turns. The film returns to history, to the clean voices of the first explorers. Venera rode down through heat and pressure and spoke until its words melted. Pioneer listened for lightning and traced the sulfur's path. Magellan's radar drew mountaintops named after goddesses and heroes, a geography made of echoes. Each mission left questions for the ones after it, like signposts on a misty road. None of them caught this exact whisper, or if they did, the tape wore thin before anyone could hear. In the present, the orbiter slides through the night side, where the sun is a memory and the air glows with its own slow light. Night on Venus is not dark. It is dim and warm, like embers under a thick blanket. The spectrograph turns from the sun and studies that glow. Does the pattern survive in darkness? The answer comes like a drawn breath. Faintly, yes, but changed. The rhythm is softer, as if distance from the sun dulls the edge of a bell. The team writes the note with care and keeps their voices low. They will try again in another orbit. They will roll the spacecraft, tilt its gaze, and check the lines. In the future, a balloon may sail the middle air, riding the winds where the whisper lives. A balloon would feel the waves like a sleeper feels a passing train. It would taste droplets, measure sizes, and watch how they gather and scatter the light. It might find that the anomaly is a dance of tiny spheres, forming and fading in time with a warmer sun. Or it might find something stranger, something that carries the steady patience of an old clock hidden in clouds. For now, the film lingers. Venus looms like a pale lantern wrapped in a gentle veil. The soundtrack is hardly there. Just a slow tone like breath behind a door. The narration steps back and lets the world speak. If you listen, really listen, you may notice how the mind tries to shape the unknown into a friendly face. It is natural. It is human. But some mysteries keep their own shapes. They ask us to stand at the edge of understanding and be quiet for a while. The spectrograph closes its shutter. The data flows on, cooling into storage like lava cooling into glass. Above the fortress, the small craft glides. Below the fortress, winds roar in hidden canyons of air. Yet inside those canyons sits a cradle of silence, places where a drop hangs, where a wave turns, where time is patient. The soft reply in the data remains, circling with the planet, rising with the sun, fading with the long night. Is it only the breath of a heavy sky, or the footstep of a messenger passing through? The camera drifts outward until Venus becomes a bright coin pressed into the dark. Starlight surrounds it like quiet voices in a far room. The question lingers without weight, like ash in still air. Whatever waits within those winds is not hurried by our curiosity. It turns in its own calm, held by gravity, warmed by light, and folded inside the sulfuric sea. The glow thins, the lines on the screen go still, and the silence deepens. Yet hidden in that silence is something waiting to be understood. A planet turns so slowly that time itself seems to hum. Far from your window, beyond the steady paths of Earth and Mars, Venus drifts in a rhythm that does not match our clocks. Its day is not a quick spin, not any 12 or 24. It is a lullaby stretched across 243 Earth days, one long note carried through cloud and heat. The planet does not just rotate, it leans the other way, a retrograde spin, like a dancer who chooses to step against the music and finds a different grace. Imagine a simple diagram on a dark screen. A pale circle for the Sun, a soft ring for Venus's orbit, an arrow that shows its slow spin backward. Another arrow, thin and patient, marks its path around the Sun. The shapes are not loud. They are a quiet map, a whisper in white ink. The narrator points to the arrows. You follow with your eyes, and the pattern settles in. Daydream and daylight on Venus are not the same as ours. There, the star rises in the west and sets in the east, if you could ever see it through the clouds. Heat presses on the world like a heavy blanket. The air is thick with carbon dioxide, rich and heavy, and the pressure at the ground is like the bottom of an ocean. The soft glow in the clouds hides lightning that flashes now and then. From a distance, each strike is only a faint pulse. Is it a warning, a messenger, or simply weather doing what weather does? The planet keeps its secrets close, like a storyteller who pauses, letting the listener lean in. Scientists once drew the first careful lines of this mystery with radio echoes and radar beams. They sent signals that touched the cloud-wrapped surface and bounced back. The timing told them how the planet turned. They found the backward spin. They measured the long day. Later, orbiters circled and listened again. They mapped the flow of clouds and the tiny shifts in frequency when light met motion. In quiet rooms, radios clicked and spectrographs drew thin lines on screens. The lines flexed, then softened, then flexed again, like the memory of a melody becoming clear. Another diagram appears. The narrator's hand traces phases of rotation around a simple circle. Markers at 90 degrees, 180, 270, full circle. Against those markers, points of anomaly are set like beads. The dots do not scatter at random. They lean toward certain angles. The voice explains, if something unusual happens more often when the planet shows a certain face to the Sun, then the cause may be tied to light and shadow, to morning and evening on a world that turns the wrong way. Picture the world itself, an ancient traveler wrapped in a gentle veil. The clouds are high and fast super-rotating, racing around the globe in just a few days, far quicker than the rock beneath them. Down below, the surface barely budges. Up above, winds fly. Between those layers, heat moves like slow honey, slipping and pooling, building and easing in a cycle that takes months. The lullaby is not just length. It is breath. Warmth builds, then gently loosens. Lightning listens, then speaks in a short flash. Every part of the world seems to wait for the long beat to return. A telescope dome opens at night. Quiet air. A steady mirror. The instrument settles on Venus when it is a bright crescent near dawn or dusk. Spectral lines, those thin threads of color that tell what gases live in the light, appear one by one. Some lines shift a little toward blue when winds race toward us. Some tilt toward red when winds move away. Over many weeks and months, the shifts form a soft pattern. They are not random. They pulse at a slow pace, a 243-day breath. The team takes notes. The data look like the rise and fall of sleep. Lightning is harder. It hides inside the clouds, and its glow is faint compared to the bright day side. The telescope watches in darkness and waits for rare nights when a thin edge of the planet shows. Instruments count the small spikes. They sort the spikes by the phase of the rotation, like birds counted by seasons. The counts bend toward certain phases. Not always, and not perfectly, but more often than chance. It could be a trick of the eye or a bias in the data. It could be a messenger. The researchers are careful. They treat wonder with respect. In one lab, a student lays out a timeline across a long table. She places color tags for wind speed, temperature hints, and lightning reports. She lays a second ribbon for the angles of Venus's slow turn: sunrise longitude, noon longitude, sunset longitude. When she steps back, the ribbons touch at a few key places. She does not cheer. She does not hurry. She makes a note: possible phase locking with rotation. Later, her advisor writes the same words in a calmer hand. The edges of their paper are soft from handling. The narrator's voice remains slow. He tells a simple truth: on Venus, a single day is longer than its year. The planet orbits the Sun in about 225 Earth days, but turns on its axis in 243. The math is gentle here, told like a bedtime rhyme. As Venus moves around the Sun, its slow spin and its path combine to make daylight at one place rise and fall at a unique rhythm. The solar day, the time from one noon to the next, is shorter than the long spin, but still vast by human time. And so the surface feels a tide of light and dark that is not daily as we know it, yet not eternal either. It is a low drum, far away, steady. If a forbidden pattern lives on Venus, it may live inside that drum. Thunder may prefer the warm hour near a very slow noon. Winds may rise when shadow lifts and cool air starts to climb. The cycle might be small, hiding behind noise and chaos, but present. The telescope teams cannot feel the air. They can only watch the light. So they stitch long runs of measurements together the way quilters stitch cloth. The picture is made of patience. In older days, spacecraft dipped into that sky and felt the push. Probes sank and told short stories before heat and pressure closed their mouths. Their metal skin creaked. Their clocks ran fast for a few minutes in the open and then went still. The data are now like pressed flowers in a book, fragile, precious. New missions will follow, with stronger bones and smarter eyes. They will float and listen, or they will orbit and watch for years. If the long heartbeat is real, they will hear it. The camera returns to the simple sketches: the soft ring of the orbit, the backward arrow of spin, the dotted beats of anomaly laid along the circle. The narrator explains the idea of a spectrograph again, so gently that a sleepy mind can hold it. Light is split into colors. Absorption lines mark the fingerprints of gases. When the gas moves toward or away, the lines shift. When many shifts align across hundreds of days, you begin to hear a rhythm under the noise, like a distant train through rain. Now he invites a small act of imagination. He asks you to close your eyes and pretend you are standing on a high plain, under clouds that never part. The ground is old lava. The air is heavy, but here in your mind you can bear it. You can hear a slow breeze, not the roaring winds above, but a low murmur near the ground. Time passes, not in minutes, but in the long glide of a sun that might never appear. You feel warmth soak the rocks. You hear a tiny rattle in the distance, a spark of thunder muffled by 1,000 layers of cloud. You do not know if it is a storm, an omen, or simply the sky talking to itself. You breathe with the planet's long heartbeat. Back at the telescope, months roll into each other. Plots grow. Researchers shade in bands for uncertainty. They test their methods on other planets to make sure nothing is cheating the results. They find that Mars does not show the same rhythm, nor Mercury. Earth's storms are too quick and varied. Only here, for Venus, does the low drum keep trying to be heard. The team brings in a modeler, someone who writes little universes in code. The model splits the atmosphere into stacked layers and lets heat move between them. It asks what happens if the ground warms for a very long morning and then slowly cools through a long night. The answer is not final, but it is promising. Vertical winds pulse. They link with the fast, high flow. Lightning prefers certain windows. The spectral lines flex, then soften, as if nodding yes. Of course, the planet is more than a neat cycle. There are dusts and hazes, strange sulfur clouds, and a chemistry that can surprise. The model does not claim victory. It speaks softly, the way a scientist should. But the shape of the answer matches the shape of the data just enough to be called a hint. A cosmic whisper, nothing more and nothing less. The narrator slows again. He reminds us that a lullaby is not only a song. It is a pattern that promises rest, a safe path for thought to wander. Venus's long day does the same. It smooths chaos into a curve you can follow with a finger. It lets the mind ease into questions without hurry. How does lightning learn a schedule? Why do the winds far above run like a river while the ground barely turns? What locks them together across such different speeds? These questions sit on the table like stones warmed by sunlight. You can pick one up, feel its weight, and set it down again. High in the sky of Venus, at the edge of the clouds, the super-rotating winds keep their own pace. They circle the globe in a few Earth days, a wild contrast to the slow rock below. They are the place where small signals can grow into large patterns. A little lift from below can tilt a wave up there. A wave can tug a jet. A jet can shape the whole hood of cloud that the sun sees from far away. If the hidden cycle rises, it may rise there first, in ripples that move like breath over silk. The last image holds on the crescent of Venus against a star field. The curve glows like a thin ember. Tiny points of starlight sit around it, patient and quiet. The narrator's voice is low and kind. He says that some mysteries refuse to be solved quickly. They are not puzzles with a single key. They are places to rest, to listen, to measure again. This is one of those places. The 243-day lullaby continues whether we watch or not. But when we do watch, when telescopes hold steady and spectrographs listen for the faint flecks of lines, we feel closer to a truth that lives between physics and poetry. Down on Earth, midnight and noon pass by as usual. Children sleep. Cities hum. Far away, the ancient traveler drifts through its long day, clouds shining like porcelain. A pulse moves through that sky, slow as a tide, gentle as a breath. Lightning answers now and then, a rare reply. Winds above carry the news from one horizon to the other. Somewhere in that cycle, a forbidden pattern waits for our patience to match its own. The crescent fades into the dark. The diagrams fold. The screens go dim. And yet, in the cradle of silence that follows, the feeling does not end. It lingers like a soft glow after sunset, like a note still ringing in the air. Something high above the clouds is lifted, thin as a veil on a breeze. It is not loud enough to name, not firm enough to hold, but it is there, and in the drifting quiet, one could almost sense that another secret was about to reveal itself. High above the furnace, the air runs like a river let loose. It circles the world on a super-rotating stream that arrives before the planet can turn. Clouds stretch into bands, thin as a whisper. In this high country of wind, the world is quiet. The noise is down below, sealed under heat and rock. Balloons ride these rivers the way seeds ride autumn air. They do not fight the flow. They surrender and listen. Small instruments hang beneath them, quiet eyes and careful ears. Wherever the current bends, they bend. Their job is to learn the mood of the sky. One meter counts ions. Another tastes thin traces of gas. A spectrograph splits light, letting chemistry speak in lines. Sometimes the solar wind brushes the cloud tops as gently as a moth's wing. Charged particles tap the atmosphere and leave a faint echo, a tremble too light for skin but clear to these lanterns. Those touches make the air ring in patterns, as if a faraway bell had been struck. In those moments, the anomaly flickers. Not a storm, not a lamp, but a small change in rhythm, a soft stutter in a signal that otherwise keeps time. On film, wave trains appear rows of curling silver, each crest folding under the one ahead. They travel like a gentle veil, thin and orderly. The shimmer rides with them, a soft signature that says the tide of air can carry news. It is a courier with pockets for secrets. Beneath these calm lanes of wind, the ground broils. The surface is a slow ocean of fire. Volcanoes are rumored the way the old speak of distant relatives, not seen today, but felt in the stories the land tells. Heat spills upward in a luminous haze, a breathing that never stops. From the high air, the glow is only a suggestion, a faint ember through cloud. Yet the instruments feel it, because heat bends air, and bent air changes the song of the wind. The contrast is soothing and eerie at once. Above, a cradle of silence. Below, a promise of thunder. It is like watching two oceans layered together, one of air, pale and quick, one of molten stone, dark and slow. Where they touch, the world writes messages in waves and eddies. If the wind is the courier, then what is the message? The question returns as regularly as orbit. It returns when balloons drift through a speeding band and the anomaly grows bright. It returns when the flow weakens and the sign fades. Early teams called it a messenger because they did not know what else to call a pattern that arrived with the wind and vanished with it. They set more instruments afloat and aimed telescopes from orbit, catching starlight that slid through the thin cloud roof. Chemistry answers softly. In the high layers, sunlight breaks apart simple gases and lets them join again. Some become tiny seeds for clouds, grains so small they remain suspended. Others catch charge and hold it the way a face holds warmth. Layer by layer, the sky builds thin sheets, stacked waves, drifting shadows. When the solar wind taps this roof of air, the layers vibrate, and a signal moves outward like circles on a pond. The air has tides. They rise each day with heat and fall each night with cooling. But here they also answer to the great steady flow that runs ahead of the spin. The super-rotating wind braids the daily tides into long ropes of motion. Along those ropes, the shimmer travels, not bright enough for eyes, but clear in data. A spectrograph shows a line tilt where no tilt should be. A microphone records a near-silent hum. A pressure cell notes a delicate step. Balloons descend and rise with the waves. In some layers, the air is thin as a memory. In others, it presses like a hand. The instruments note tiny changes. An extra whisper of sulfur here, a missing taste of water. They're small clues that the courier passes through rooms with different rules. Sometimes, anomalies stack flicker upon flicker, as if many messengers traveled together for a while. Sometimes everything smooths out, and the data settles into a plane line, a page of rest. The ground, though unseen, keeps sending its slow grammar upward. Heat columns climb, twist, and spread like smoke underwater. If a volcano stirs, the air knows first, because the sky is a listener. The film catches faint ripples from distant ranges. The balloons feel pressure rise a hair's breadth, then ease. Nothing breaks. Nothing erupts in view. Yet the signs collect like hints in a notebook, and the world becomes readable. From orbit, the planet wears a ring of haze, a soft crown where sunlight meets the high wind. Telescopes stare through it the way you stare through curtains at dawn. The edges of land, if land exists, blur. Seas, if they exist, hide under cloud. Over hours, wave trains move like lines of a poem. They pause at valleys in the flow, then gather and run. The messenger appears where the ropes of motion braid tight. There is no single discovery to hold. There are only patterns, a faint periodic pulse, a tie to wind speed, a small color shift at certain heights, a near-silent chime when the solar wind passes. Past teams wrote each clue in the margins of their maps. Future teams will test them. For now, in this calm watching, the clues are enough. They point to a chemistry that is not uniform, to a sky that writes and rewrites itself in visible ink and then in invisible ink. Night comes fast in this high stream, because the wind carries you into the dark sooner than the ground expects. Stars appear through thinning blue. The balloons answer with their own threads records stretched across hours, patient, exact. When dawn returns, the pattern repeats, but never exactly. It is like listening to a river. The sound is the same, the song always new. What, then, is the message the courier guards? Perhaps it is this. The planet is not a thing but a conversation. Heat speaks to air. Air speaks to space. Space answers with light and dust. The messenger keeps the rhythm between them. Or perhaps the message is stranger, an unexplained code born where waves cross, a hidden grammar built from ions and light. For now the answer remains soft, like breath on glass. The instruments keep their watch. Others will bring new sensors, finer ears, better eyes. Yet even then, the sight will open the same way. A veil of waves, a silver shimmer, a sense that the world offers news if you are gentle with it. In the end, the high air returns to its cradle of silence. The courier passes, and the river continues, tireless and calm. Far below, the ocean of fire turns in its sleep. Between them, in the tender layers where wind becomes weather and weather becomes memory, the smallest pulses carry on. The glow at the horizon slips toward gold, then ash. The cameras rest. The balloons drift. And in the drifting quiet, one can almost sense that another secret waits just beyond the veil. Patient as dawn dot in the soft glow of lab lights, glass shines like small moons. A row of flasks gives off tiny reflections, calm and steady. Pumps murmur. Filters rest in their housings like quiet guards. A spectrograph waits, its narrow slit a single eye that loves starlight. Tonight, the room holds a slow, patient breath. They are rebuilding a cloud that no one can touch, rebuilding it from memory, from data, from faith. It is a cloud of sulfuric acid and thin, sharp droplets. Trace gases drift through it like rumors. Somewhere far away, some light crosses that cloud and comes back altered. Its colors bent, its lines not quite right. An anomaly, they called it. A whisper in the spectrum. A hidden messenger that refuses to say its name. They recreate the droplets, one careful step at a time. The chemists measure acidity with a patience learned from oceans and storms. They chill the chamber, then warm it, then chill it again. They dry a sample with a stream of nitrogen so gentle it seems like a lullaby. Each move has a memory attached to it, a past observation, a past error. The compressors hum, steady and low like distant thunder on a clear night. When the gas lines click in, a soft clink of glass replies, as if the lab itself nods. The spectrograph begins to sip light, and a thin graph appears on a monitor. Peaks rise. Valleys deepen. The room grows quieter, as if listening to a story told in a language of shadows. They had seen this pattern before, high above a harsh surface. The lines in the spectrum did not match what sulfuric acid alone should write. There were extra strokes, faint but stubborn, always near the breath of day. When the sun touched the cloud, the signature grew brighter. When darkness came, it faded like a dream you almost remember. It did not say life. It did not even say something alive. It simply said unexplained. It said, look again. The team remembered the headlines from long ago, the spike of hope and the rush of debate. They remembered how easy it is to mistake noise for signal, how error bars whisper the limits of our answers. So they slow down. They test the filters. They wash the tubing. They heat the chamber a little and watch the lines drift. They cool it and watch them sharpen. A technician adjusts an alignment screw by the width of a hair. The graph steadies. At the bench, a small notebook lies open. In it, someone has drawn the anomaly not as a peak, but as a thin reply two strokes where there should be one. A hidden reply, the note says. A secret that answers only when light knocks at the right angle. It is gentle, almost shy, and yet it will not go away. It behaves like chemistry answering the sun. You might picture the cloud, even from your bed. Imagine a pale veil hanging above a world of heat and stone. The droplets are strong with acid. They sting even in thought. Through them, light moves like a traveler through reeds. Certain colors slow, others slip by. If a strange gas wanders there, it leaves a fingerprint small, precise, like a comet's path across a telescope's view. The spectrograph compares these fingerprints to libraries of known suspects. The familiar patterns line up like constellations. But this one sits slightly off the map. Not fully wild, but not quite home. Theories gather like dust motes in a sunbeam, each one drifting, each one bright for a moment. Could it be volcanic breath, rising from a deep, restless interior? Volcanic gases are old letters from a planet's heart. They can be sharp with sulfur, soft with water, laced with minerals crushed and remade. Events are active beneath the cloud. Their sigh might carry upward, mixing with acid fog, painting thin lines where sunlight grazes the edge. Or is it mineral dust, ground fine as flour, hurled by winds and warmed by day? Dust can trick the light, turning spectra into puzzles. And then there is the fragile thought, the one no one wants to lead with. Something more delicate. A chemistry not yet written on our shelves. They had learned to hold wonder in one hand and caution in the other. Wonder keeps you awake. Caution lets you sleep. On the whiteboard, someone has drawn a timeline. The first detection, the press of questions, the attempts to repeat, the revisions, the long silence, and then, slowly, a return to the bench. The past is a patient teacher. Instruments drift. Calibrations slip. The lab is a ship that must be trimmed, its sails set against small winds of error. Tonight, they align the lamp that feeds the spectrograph. They check the wavelength ruler against its standard. They measure nothing at all blank baselines. When the anomaly appears again, its shape is cleaner. The room does not cheer. It breathes. There is beauty here, soft and useful. The acoustics of the place are simple. The hush of filters, the low heartbeat of compressors, the gentle click of glass settling into rubber stops. These are cradle sounds. They hold large questions without strain. The team speaks quietly, as if the cloud might startle. One researcher recalls a comet seen years ago, its faint tail brighter in the morning. Another mentions an orbit that pulls close to a star and drifts away, the chemistry changing with every lap. They are not telling stories to waste time. They are reminding each other that light is alive with context. Day changes things. So does night. Heat builds, cools, and builds again. Past missions had given them numbers, and numbers had given them this room. Satellites watched the cloud from above. Telescopes on the ground watched it from below. Each instrument made a map of color and emptiness. In those maps, the anomaly flickered. It grew when the sun rose over the rim. It faded when darkness took the heights. The pattern suggests a reaction lit by day, quenched by night. That does not make it life. It makes it a rhythm. The chemists decide to chase that rhythm, to let their lab follow the same schedule as the faraway sky. They run the chamber through dawn, noon, dusk. In the data, a small wave rises and falls. It is not a shout. It is a breath. They try volcanic mixes, layering gases that might seep from heat and stone. With each new blend, the spectrograph listens. Sometimes the peaks move closer to the mystery. Sometimes they drift away. Mineral dust is harder. Dust is wild, a traveler with many faces. They grind samples, suspend them, heat them, let them settle. The lines they draw are thick and ragged. Useful, but not exact. The anomaly remains thin. It prefers the edge of sunlight. It leans toward morning. It feels fragile, as if built from a small population of wandering molecules that wake at daybreak and rest by night. Future missions, they agree, will need to fly through the cloud and smell it directly, not just listen to its echo in light. For now, the echo is enough to keep them here. The lab becomes a small world with its own weather. Coffee cools by the keyboard. Someone dims the overhead lights to see the screen better. In the darker room, the graph looks like a city skyline seen from faraway tall towers of known chemistry. And there, on the edge, a small spire whose name no one will yet speak aloud. Hope glimmers in faces, then softens. A senior scientist writes error bars on the board, underlines it, draws a circle. The circle is not a cage. It is a grace. It says, "We do not know yet," and that is allowed. Late in the night, the team pauses. They listen not only to the machine, but to the quiet around the machine. Science is often loud in books, but in rooms like this, it is a low murmur, a careful hand, a steady breath, exactly the kind of sound that lets a person float towards sleep while still feeling close to the work. The anomaly remains. It is not a trick of a loose cable. It is not a smear of dust on a lens. It is a small signal that behaves with the day. The trail, thin and insistent, points not up to life in the clouds, but down toward heat and stone, toward vents and fractures where gases are born and change and rise. Tomorrow, they will test new mixtures. They will shape the chamber's light to match that far horizon more closely. They will let the spectrograph keep listening. The planet, if it could speak, might ask for patience. Its surface is hot, its heart still busy. The cloud is not a garden but a stage, and chemistry plays there with quiet drama. For those who watch, wonder and caution move together like a double star, two lights circling, steadying each other. The hidden reply remains near the brush of sunlight. It fades in darkness. It leaves behind a thin line that the lab learns by heart. When the screens dim and the pumps slow, the room returns to silence. Yet the silence is not empty. It holds a shape like an unplayed note. Outside, the night settles over the building. Somewhere, a telescope turns, following a path it has traced 1,000 times. In here, the last person closes a notebook and looks once more at the graph. Not solved, not erased, simply waiting. The glow fades across the monitor's edge. But in that fading lies a question, slender and patient. That leans toward the warmth of unseen rock and in the drifting quiet. One could almost sense that another secret was about to reveal itself. The map does not begin as a picture. It begins as a whisper. Pulses sweep across a hidden world, bounce, and return. In orbit, a patient instrument folds those echoes into shape. The result is a radar tapestry, rippling like a soft curtain held up to starlight. It shows mountains that look like frozen waves, rifts that cut like careful knives, and broad plains poured smooth by fire. There is no open sky here, only a veil of clouds, bright and secretive. Yet the surface speaks through this curtain, and what it says is simple and deep. Long ago, something burned, and it may still burn now. The mountains look old, but edges stay sharp where they should be worn. Ridges keep their fine grain. Lava fields lie like fresh paint that never fully dried. In quiet tones, the landscape suggests recency without bragging. The plains are not flat by accident. They are flat because they were poured. The rifts are not random. They trace a tension, a planet pulling itself apart and pushing itself together in slow breaths. If you close your eyes and imagine heat moving under stone, you can almost feel the ground lift, settle, and lift again. Beneath that veil, some features grow to scales that invite the word supervolcano. Great circular scars sit like sleeping mouths, their rims broken in places where pressure once found release. Calderas stack upon older calderas, a layered memory of past upheaval. None of this is loud. The planet keeps its secrets by being very still in the present moment. Yet stillness can be deceptive. A fortress wall looks calm until its gates swing open. The crust here is a wall. The deep mantle is the gate. And the gate, perhaps, is not sealed. Scientists trace a path from magma to cloud, a gentle arc of cause and effect. Melt rises along fractures. It creeps into chambers that squeeze. And fin. Gas bubbles form, then gather, then surge. Some break free as narrow plumes, thin as threads in the heavy air. Others push wider, release in drafts that mix with the upper winds. From these breaths come aerosols, small particles that glint when touched by the sun. They drift like snow that never falls. Suspended in the thick atmosphere, scattering light in ways that make remote watchers pause and peer closer. In that scattering lives an unexplained signal, a shimmering pattern that should not be so strong, or should be stronger, depending on the model. Measurements from orbit show a brightness that waves, gentle but persistent, as though reflecting off a sea that is not there. Telescopes beyond the atmosphere pick up a faint change in color, a tilt where the spectrum should run straight. Spectrographs track the tilt over weeks and months, and the line slides back and forth, never very far, as if the planet adjusts a mask, not to reveal its face, but to hint at expression. Past missions had noticed hints of youth. They flew by or orbited briefly and found surfaces with fewer scars than expected, as if time applied lightly. They mapped lava flows that crossed older flows, crisp on the edges, reluctant to erode. They recorded quake-like tremors that did not fit perfectly with the models of a quiet crust. Each observation, taken alone, was modest. Together, they formed a small chorus, a prophecy written in rock and radar lines, sung without urgency, but with calm certainty. Renewal visits here. The planet is not only a record of what was, it is a draft of what might be again. If eruptions pulse, they do so undercover. Lava need not always reach the open. Heat can rise, gases can escape, and the surface above can only swell a little, like a sleeper's chest. But clouds can tell on the ground. In the right light, with the right angle, a plume becomes a sheet, and a sheet becomes a veil with new thread. Sunlight strikes those threads, scatters, and returns to the watchers as altered starlight. The change is not a shout. It is an almost forbidden pattern, a subtle signature that the planet might prefer to keep to itself. That is why it tempts curiosity. That is why it converts patience into discovery. The watchers are methodical. They schedule observations as the planet slides through its phases. They aim radio dishes to listen for the soft hiss of charged particles rising with dust. They calibrate telescopes to track the planet's bright crescent, where reflected light carries the finest texture. In the data lab, they subtract the sun's own flicker and the whispers of Earth's air. They feed small errors into models and watch the models bend and settle. What remains after this careful stripping is a residue, a signal that looks like the breath of an unseen fire. It is not proof. It is a direction. Consider the journey of a single molecule, call it a traveler from deep melt to high cloud. It begins as part of a dense mix, caught in heat and pressure. It finds space in a bubble and floats upward, buoyed by difference. At a fracture, it slips through. An event, it rides a warm draft. Higher, it meets neighbors and condenses onto a seed of dust, joining a bright and tiny crystal. In sunlight, that crystal flashes in a way no flat surface would. A spectrograph far away registers that flash as a small bend in the curve of color. Large mysteries often enter through small bends. Orbit helps make sense of this. The spacecraft circles and the angle between sun, planet, and instrument changes. With each change, the returning echo shifts. Over time, a pattern emerges, a kind of tidal rhythm in the radar brightness. The rhythm does not match only mountains and plains. Something temporal lies on top of the permanent map, like ripples riding a deep swell. It could be waves in the clouds. It could be bursts of haze that widen and thin. It could be the breath of volcanoes beneath the veil, exhaling on a schedule set not by weather, but by pressure. On some nights, the team points a telescope and lets the planet drift across the field. They are quiet, because the work rewards quiet. Some stand by the spectrograph, following its live trace, a rolling graph that writes its own sentence across a screen. The sentence is simple most of the time. Then a word tilts. The line leans where it should sit level, and someone marks the time. Later, another tilt, at almost the same angle, almost the same phase. Coincidence, perhaps. Coincidence, repeated. Coincidence, now a pattern. The room does not cheer. It breathes. If the pattern holds, it suggests timing. Perhaps the deep system runs on pressure cycles, like tides within rock. Perhaps small eruptions cluster when heat pools, then pause when the pool drains. If so, the cloud tops may carry that clock. You could, in theory, read the time of the interior by reading the light of the air. That is the dream of remote science, to turn starlight into touch, to learn the shape of what cannot be touched, to turn patient watching into knowledge that fits the hand and mind, gentle as a stone warmed by the sun. The planet, meanwhile, remains both fortress and messenger. Its fortress walls are the thick clouds and the heat below. They keep visitors at a distance and force instruments to work by echo and reflection. Its messages are subtle, but not impossible. A tilt in brightness, a ripple where smoothness should be, a timing that repeats more than chance. The surface has a memory layered in flows and folded rims. The air has a memory written in fine dust and droplets. Read together, they tell a story of fire that never truly rests, only slows its breath and waits. There is hope in this. Worlds are shaped by more than cold impacts and slow cooling. Fire writes its own scripts. Mountains raised in nights, plains poured from glowing rivers, and rifts that stretch like quiet yawns. In the distant past, such acts shaped more than this one planet. Across the dark, exoplanets circle their suns, many wrapped in clouds, some hiding similar storms of stone and gas. Telescopes learn to listen to them as well, to trace their trajectories from magma to sky. The tools improve, the patience deepens, and the unknown becomes a little less unknown. And yet the mystery remains. The veil does not lift. It lets a little light through, then mutes the rest. Watchers accept this, because accepting is part of seeing. They keep their instruments tuned, their models modest, their questions steady. Could a future eruption mark the clouds so clearly that even a sleepy eye would notice? Could a single night of bright haze draw a new line in the spectrum, clean and unmistakable? These are not demands. They are gentle invitations to a world that answers in its own time. So the radar continues to ripple. The telescopes continue to wait. The spectrographs continue to write their thin sentences, one after another, across a quiet screen. In that routine is comfort. In that comfort is courage. The planet holds its breath, or seems to, and the watchers measure the breath from the cradle of Earth's silenced desert domes, mountain ridges, orbiting platforms that glide like ancient travelers. The glow fades along the horizon of data for the night, but in its fading, it carries a question that lingers in every watcher's mind, the kind that softens the heart and sharpens the ear. Somewhere behind the veil, something is speaking. The silence deepened, yet hidden in that silence was something waiting to be understood. Night comes like a soft curtain over the mountains. On quiet ridgelines, domes unwind and open, white petals turning to the dark. Inside, mirrors drink starlight. The glass is cold, the air thin, and the world below whispers with distant towns. Each telescope settles into its track, humming a slow circle across the sky. A red light fades. Motors breathe. Under the great black bowl, the first long exposure begins, and an ancient traveler steps into view as a faint tremble of brightness, barely more than a thought. Starlight runs through glass and into the spectrograph, split into rainbows of meaning. It is simple to the eyes, colors arranged like a river, but to the careful mind, it is a story, line by line. Hydrogen speaks, sodium murmurs. Small gaps and small. Spikes hint at motion, heat, dust. In the control rooms, coffee cools beside notebooks as screens unfold these spectra in real time. The anomaly, a thin mark writing the data, stays quiet but present. It is not a glare, not a smudge. It appears again when the dome turns back, as if it has waited for them to look. By day, the teams compare plots and check logs. By night, the open flowers of the domes lift again. Seasons turn around them, snow to thaw, thaw to the green of grass, then back to frost, and the anomaly persists. It moves with patience. The watchers learn patience too. They chart its angle against Earth's orbit, then the moon's pull, then the bright push of the solar wind. They stack the nights like pages in a book, and the book grows thick. The pattern is not loud. It gathers in tiny steps. Between snapshots, the planet breathes. The atmosphere bends light like water, and tides ripple in the high air. They adjust for that, modeling the shimmer with care. A wobble at dawn is not a message. A heat wave after afternoon storms is not a sign. The anomaly is trimmed free of these tricks, trimmed and tested until only the clean trace remains. It does not belong to the low layers of wind. It does not belong to local weather. It keeps its own time, its own small signature. In quiet rooms where the hum of fans is the main sound, the data teams share a different weather loneliness, hope, and the steady warmth of purpose. Their calendars fill with midnight shifts and noon meetings. They pass the baton across longitudes, so someone is always awake with the sky. In one lab, someone keeps a tiny planet model on the desk. In another, a sticky note says, "Be kind to your future self." At 3 in the morning, kindness feels like clean code and clear labels. The anomaly needs both. The narrator's voice stays calm, like wind over a lake. He explains how the mirrors are washed, how sensors are cooled, how the camera shutters click with a soft tick that echoes through the dome. The work is simple and hard at once. They remove bias frames and dark current. They subtract the glow of the Milky Way's rich dust, a nebulous spill, a city's far halo. They test the instrument's heart, searching for any hidden beat that could mimic a messenger. Night after night, they return to the same patch of sky as sailors return to a star. The unknown traveler does not leave. When they plot its brightness over the months, they see a rise as the planet curves toward the sun and warmth leaks into the inner system. Near perihelion, the point closest to that great fire, the line climbs as if the traveler wakes and stretches in the light. Afterward, as Earth moves on and the energy fades, the signal cools and drops. It is small but real, a tide that answers the sun. They mark it in a quiet room with a pencil tapping on the desk, then circle it, then draw the same arc on other charts. The shape repeats. The shape holds. A pattern emerging does not end a question. It sharpens it. They look to the usual suspects first. A meteor stream could dust the air with tiny grains, each one brightening a path. But meteor dust leaves sharp nights of sparks, flares, and trails that bite the images. In their frames, no such teeth appear. The nights when common showers peak do not match the anomaly's steady rise and fall. The dates disagree. The dust idea softens and slips away. An asteroid's breath, frozen gas turned to vapor as heat returns, can make a ghostly cloud, a comet-like veil that drifts through orbit. They test that too. Trajectory models show where such a cloud would hang, how sunlight would scatter in it, how fast it would move. Their cameras watch those places like guards at quiet doors. Nothing bright enough enters. Nothing long enough stays. And the spectrograph, the careful judge, does not see the fatty lines of water or carbon that such clouds often carry. The asteroid breath is not absent in the universe, but here it does not speak. Some eyes turn toward Venus, the bright lantern near the sun. Venus often gives the sky a trick. High clouds, thick with acid droplets, shining with a soft, pearly glow. If sunlight hit some piece of that world and flung particles outward, would the Earth catch a taste? They check the angles against Venus's position, and the math does not favor it. The times are wrong. The winds of the solar system would smear the effect into a haze they should have seen, and they did not. Venus keeps her secrets, but this one does not feel like hers. Night follows night. The domes open and starlight pours down as if it were a quiet rain. The spectrographs continue to parse it. The anomaly remains faint, patient, and tied to heat like a seed stirring under soil. What is left? The answer points upward, not sideways. It points to the thin height where the air thins into nothing. The mesosphere, the thermosphere, the soft edge where satellites skim and atoms drift along. That is where the evidence whispers. There, perihelion warmth arrives as a slow tide. There, fresh particles from the sun brush the high air. There, the night glows, very faint with bands and lines the naked eye cannot see. They align their records with the Earth's own auroral breaths and find a timing that is not the same but not far away. This is no aurora, no curtain of dancing green, yet the way it answers solar rhythm feels like family. In the graphs, they see a faint echo like a call made in a canyon returning after long seconds. The echo is steady and shy. It waits at the border where space begins, as if not wanting to step fully into either world. When the shutters tick and the mirrors drink, the echo grows just enough to write its name. So the watchers change the watch. The ground is good, but the ground is also a cradle. It rocks with weather. It breathes in tides. It hums with human light. To test the sky itself, one must leave the cradle. Just a little, just enough to look down on the veil instead of through it. This is not a drama, not a race. It is a careful motion, like standing from a chair without waking a sleeping child. They begin to plan ways to drift above the air they have modeled so well. The ideas are simple and old. Balloons to the stratosphere, where the air is blue-black at noon and the planet shines like a map. Small instruments, quiet and tough, to listen for the same faint lines without the shimmer of the lower winds. Cameras that open their eyes above the weather, so a single hour is as clean as a perfect winter night on the tallest peak. Some talk about small rockets, the kind that kiss space and fall back, carrying spectrographs that can drink unbent starlight. None of this is invention. All of it is a new way to hold the question. In the labs, they prepare by taking apart their own certainty. They replay old nights and insert tiny lies on purpose fake signals of known shape, decoys to trick Decode. If the pipeline catches them, the team breathes easier. If it does not, they fix what is broken and look again. They scrub the mirrors. They practice packing gear with gloves. They measure how a cable pulls in cold air and how a sensor sings when the sun touches it at dawn. To move upward means each small thing must be trusted. The world beyond their rooms remains as it was. Birds at evening, frost on grass, a child asleep in a car seat, as stars appear like salt across a dark table. The watchers notice these things more in this season. Patience makes ordinary light feel holy. They talk in quiet voices, in the way people do when they share a fragile hope. The unknown traveler has not given them a name to write in stone. It has given them something else, a path that rises from ground to edge, from breath to no breath, from the known to the almost known. Through the soft click of shutters, the film of the sky keeps running. Some frames show small fluctuations that match the planet's slow warm turn toward the sun. Some show the cooling afterward, as if the traveler pulls a thin blanket closer and then loosens it again. If you were there with them, if you stood under the dome and felt the floor's gentle motor, you would hear how quiet it is between those clicks. In that quiet, a person can feel time not as a straight line but as a circle, wider than a year, older than memory. One day, when the last winter cloud sails off the ridge, a chart goes up on the wall. It is simple, a curve rising and falling like a breath, a label that says perihelion, and a small zone shaded near the top where the anomaly sings faintly louder. The room is still. No one cheers. The watchers nod, as if greeting a visitor who has stood at the door for a long time. The curve is not proof. It is an invitation. It invites them to rise, to look with new eyes, to ask the sky from closer range. Above them, the night lifts its gentle veil and shows its thin edge. The mountains sit like old ships in a dark sea. Telescopes fold their petals and sleep until the next turn of Earth. The anomaly, the hidden messenger, is not solved. It is simply present, where the blue thins to black and the black turns to quiet. The watchers follow with patient hearts. The air is calm, the mirrors clean, the spectrographs ready. A path opens upward, and in the drifting quiet, one could almost sense that another secret was about to reveal itself. They rise before sunrise. When the sky is not dark and not light, a gentle veil between worlds. The balloons look like lanterns let loose from a quiet shore. Their silver skins drink the first hints of starlight, then the soft glow of day. Below them the planet turns, cloud tops folding and unfolding like slow surf. Above them, orbiters slide along measured paths, tracing the margin between night and morning. In this thin band, the air is calm, the wind's patient, and the world seems to hold its breath. Each probe carries a small lab. There are pumps and filters, a spectrograph that tastes the light, and a clock that ticks with a steady kindness. There are whispering radios, trained to listen for a messenger moving along those heights. The solar wind brushes past, not as a storm, but as a cool whisper against thin skins and careful antennas. Instruments feel it and mark its touch. They compare its rhythm to the planet's own beat. They log tiny changes in charge and temperature. Every second matters. The orbiters keep watch from above. Their paths are long ovals, crossing the twilight line over and over. They do not rush. They swing through the breath of dawn, then again through the breath of dusk, letting 1,000 brief mornings pass across their panels. To look from their windows, if they had windows, would be to see a horizon of gold. The light is low and slanted, shadows drawn long. The cloud tops glow like embers. Below, the balloons float where the air is kindest. They tilt and level, like boats on a lake. When data flows, the control rooms stay hushed. Engineers lean closer. Scientists fold their hands. The graphs are slow rivers that never quite repeat. There is wonder and also patience. The work is simple in motion, but deep in meaning. Hold at altitude, listen, breathe, and wait. At certain heights, something brightens. It is not a light, not a flame, but an effect, a shimmer in the numbers, a hidden turn in the curve. The anomaly prefers the borderlands, the margin between day and night. There, particle streams and chemistry mingle in a fragile balance. Sunlight wakes some molecules, shadow calms others. Electric fields stretch and relax, like a harp strummed by unseen fingers. Magnetic threads arc across the sky, tying parts of the air together, guiding tiny travelers along invisible roads. The balloons drift through these roads. Their antennas feel small pushes, small pulls. Their spectrographs sip the glow born where night softens into day. The orbiters see it too as they graze the cloud tops in their low passes. Onboard cameras, tuned to more than human eyes, catch soft bands and faint halos, a nebula-like haze spread thin across the horizon. In each pass, the haze shifts. In each pass, the tracks of charged dust and gas change their pace, like dancers learning a new step. If a messenger moves along those heights, the team wonders, could it be carried by these fields and threads? Could it drift the way a comet's tail drifts, not by its own will, but by the shape of the wind and the pull of the magnetic lines? The thought is patient and careful. It is not a bold claim, only a question, shaped by long watching. The plan for the next experiment is simple in outline and hard in practice. Synchronized watches, synchronized orbits, synchronized hearts almost. The orbiters will cross the dawn line at the same moment the balloons reach the golden height. The planet's shadow will act as a switch, moving across the instruments like a curtain. When shadow falls, radios will listen. When sun returns, they will listen again. The timing must be exact. The clocks are checked and checked again. Signals are rehearsed. A test tone chirps across the sky and comes back as an echo. Everyone nods. In the quiet of mission night, the control room windows show only their own reflections. The planet spins, but the room feels still. A map glows on the wall. Thin lines for paths, small dots for ships and stations. The orbiters draw clean loops. The balloons drift like thought. The margin between night and day looks like a single line, but it is many miles wide, full of tiny doors. The team has learned this over months, and the learning has been calm, almost like a bedtime story told by the planet itself. When the moment arrives, it is unhurried. The first orbiter enters the dawn arc. The second follows like a shadow with its own mind. The balloons rise 100 meters, then 100 more. Clock hands meet their marks. The planet's shadow slips forward, a soft tide. The solar wind eases. Electric fields turn, as if the air exhales. The radios hush. For a blink, there's only the small hiss of life between circuits. Then the signal comes thin, patient, like a line drawn across silence. It is not speech. It is not a beacon. It is a change in pattern, a tiny bend in the weave of the fields at the exact moment the shadow kisses the antennas. The graphs pick it up first. A scientist points, but her finger stops in the air, as if not to break the spell. The line is there, then not, then there again, each time tied to the edge of the shadow. The orbiters see it from above and from the side, two angles agreeing. The balloons feel it pass like a brush of cold air against the cheek. The control room breathes out. Calm returns, deeper than before. The computers record everything. The spectrograph shows a faint rise in bands that mark charged particles, the way a telescope might show a star brightening in a clear dawn. The trajectories of tiny streams are drawn on the map. They graze the cloud tops, bow to the magnetic threads, and lean into the breeze of the solar wind. It is beautiful and also strange. The anomaly, whatever it is, loves the borderlands. Days pass in this rhythm. Dawn, dusk, drift, listen. The orbiters loop. The balloons hold. The team repeats the timing with small changes. Higher, lower, a minute earlier, a minute later. The line appears, fades, appears again. It does not speak words, yet it feels like an answer, or perhaps a question mirrored back at the askers. They remember older records of such borderland glows, hints buried in faded logs and in stories told by pilots and observers long before orbit. The new data gives those stories shape, like mist turning into a coastline. The idea of a messenger returns in quiet meetings. If something moves along those heights, it may not be a thing in the way humans expect. It may be a pattern, a route, a habit of particles shaped by the planet and the sun, a harbinger, perhaps not of danger, but of connection, an unexplained rhythm that binds day to night. The engineers think about it in designs. They imagine instruments that could surf the field lines, the way a leaf rides a gentle stream. The scientists dream of mapping the whole margin, tracing every hidden road around the world. In past missions, discoveries have come like sudden sparks, sharp and bright. This one feels different. It is a soft glow that grows when eyes grow patient. It is the kind of science suited to bedtime. Steady, kind, almost lullaby-like. The clocks tick. The air warms at dawn and cools at dusk. The data deepens. The memory of each pass sits beside the next, and together they paint a picture that no single moment could. Show. One evening, as the planet rolls the dusk line under an orbiter's wing, a camera set for long exposure watches the horizon. It catches a band of light too smooth to be cloud and too steady to be lightning. It is there and gone, no brighter than a thought. In the lab, the team studies the frame. The band curves with the magnetic field, bends with the electric tilt, and sits exactly where the radios heard their calm reply. It is not proof of a messenger. It is proof of a path. Sometimes a path is the message. The plan grows gentler and bolder at once. More passes at dawn. More floats at the golden height. Synchronized watches again, but now with small shifts to test the edges. The planet's shadow becomes a tool as much as a sight, a ruler laid across a moving page. Timing tells what chemistry cannot. Timing reveals what the eye would miss. In the quiet hours, when the control room hums and the world outside goes to sleep, some on the team feel the pull of an older story. The numbers on the screen are new, but the rhythm they mark may be very old. Long before machines, long before clocks, there were mornings and evenings. There were birds that lifted on the first light, and flowers that opened and closed. There were travelers who set out at dawn and returned at dusk. Perhaps the air has held a memory of those passages, written not in words, but in fields and currents. Perhaps the sky has always carried a cosmic whisper along its edges. They do not say this out loud in their reports. They write with care and measure. Yet as the balloons drift like lanterns and the orbiters glide like patient swans, the feeling remains, a quiet link between what is seen and what is felt, between science and the dream of science. The anomaly brightens at certain altitudes because that is where the world is balanced, where light and shadow hold each other in a fragile truce. To watch this place is to watch a secret speak in a simple voice. And so the work continues calm, steady, hopeful. Synchronized watches, quiet rooms, golden horizons. The graphs align again and again, each time pointing, gently, towards something older than any machine. The glow fades into the horizon, but in its fading, it carries a question that lingers in every watcher's mind, and in the drifting quiet, one could almost sense that another secret was about to reveal itself. The evening star slips into twilight like a lantern behind a thin curtain. Along rivers, deserts, and coasts, people pause. In Babylon, in Maya lands, in Greece, the same bright point appears, low and steady, carrying wonder and worry in equal measure. They call it a messenger, a harbinger, a sign. It does not speak, yet it gathers stories as it rises. The four glass lenses, careful eyes became telescopes of the mind. Watchers kept time with water and the sweep of shadows. They marked where the evening star first showed itself, a finger width above the horizon, then another, then gone. They counted nights until it returned as the morning star, sharp and pale in the blue of dawn. From this, a pattern emerged, an orbit traced by patience alone. Each culture shaped that pattern with meaning. When the evening star clung to the afterglow, some expected rain. When it vanished, some feared silence from the gods. Prophecy lived close to the heart, offering a story to hold when seas were rough or fields were dry. But alongside fear grew another kind of faith, trust in repetition. If the light had come before, it would come again. The film honors both paths. We move through courtyards and along stone steps, hearing a quiet drum and the whisper of wind. The narrator's voice is low and kind. History is a memory, and memory may hold truth. Hands sketch the horizon. Marks in dust and clay become a discipline. The practice is simple. Look up at the same place at the same time, night after night. From those markings, a gentle geometry appears. The evening star climbs, lingers, and then sinks. After a bright absence near the sun, the morning star takes its turn, rising before day, fading as birds begin. Orbit, not omen, governs the glow. Yet omen does not disappear. It becomes personal. A reliable light steadies the mind. A steady clock steadies the city. Ancient astronomers separated story from measure with habit. They watched from fixed points. They compared seasons and ignored mirage. Without naming it, they carried error bars in their hearts. Their records turned prophecy into calendar and calendar into knowledge. Still, mystery stayed near, because a bright point in the dusk can feel like a message even when it is sunlight on a neighboring world. Modern tools arrive gently, as if entering a temple with shoes in hand. Telescopes reveal the phases of the evening star, a crescent shrinking, a crescent growing as it orbits closer to the sun than Earth. Spectrographs split its light, turning glow into thin lines and careful numbers. Those lines speak of clouds and heat, of winds that circle the planet like tides in slow-motion signals too fine for eyes alone. And still the old question stirs. Do alignments matter? When Venus, the Sun, and Earth share a particular geometry, do cloud tides rise? We use the word tide softly here, like a hand on water. Not crashing waves, but a long breath, a drifting shift in the veil that wraps the planet. Scientists are gentle skeptics. They match cycles of rising and setting against long series of data brightness, temperature, the drift of cloud patterns seen from ground and space. They search for echoes that return at the same intervals that once guided watchers on rooftops. If a signal exists, it is shy. It hides at the edge of certainty and requires many seasons to be seen. The film draws a quiet parallel. On one side, a line of marks shows each evening rising, a memory of someone's hands at dusk. On the other, a graph glows with the pale light of a monitor, numbers that climb and fall in similar rhythm. The soundscape carries a soft bells, a distant drum, a wind like surf, so the eyes can rest on the shape of recurrence. To honor awe and fear is to admit their wisdom. People once read the sky because the world below was fragile. Floods came, rulers changed, seeds failed. The evening star offered a promise of return. Today, the promise remains, framed by orbit and angle and phase. We do not mock the omens. We set them beside measurement and let both be seen. Measurement, too, has feeling. To spend years with a light, to note it through illness and joy, to see it arrive a little earlier or a little brighter, this is devout work. It demands hope. It offers the small happiness of a pattern kept. And when a pattern breaks, it gives a gift, a question. Why here? Why now? What hidden hand, if any, touches the lantern in the dusk? Think of the evening star as a traveler returning along a familiar road. Sometimes dust hangs thicker. Sometimes the wind is warm. The traveler stays the same, yet conditions change. Our task is to tell traveler from weather, cycle from chance. Numbers keep faith with the road while testing the air. A slow sequence shows the planet from above, the soft glow of its day side, the silver edge of its night, cloud tops churning like cream. A narrow rainbow appears, cut by fine, dark threads. The spectrographs whisper from gases in the clouds. If old prophecies felt a beat in the rise and fall, perhaps the answer lives in those threads, in rhythms too delicate for a single lifetime to confirm. So the chapter invites patience. If yesterday's watches sensed a beat, today's machines can time that beat to the heartbeat. They listen through storms of noise for the returning note. If it is there, it will return. If it is not, the listening still matters. It binds us to those who stood in the same light, holding the same mix of hope and caution. We return to human scale. A parent and child stand at a doorway. The evening star hangs over a roofline, stubborn and bright. Is that a star? The child asks. A planet, the parent says. It shines with reflected sunlight. People once thought it was a sign. In a way, it still is a sign that the sky keeps rules. And the rules can be learned. The child nods as if the rule itself were a soft blanket. In a field, a single post casts a long shadow. Night gathers. The narrator reminds us that history is a memory, but memory sometimes points to truth. The watchers of the past are not far away. Their marks are our data. Their patience is our method. Their wonder is our fuel. We inherit their stories and their questions, and we are kinder for keeping both. The planet brightens as evening deepens, then dims as the air thickens near the horizon. Clouds on Earth make their own tides of color. The first stars appear, then more, until the sky is salt on black cloth. In that calm, the evening star holds in place like the steady note in a lullaby. Around it, the dark keeps time. To separate myth from measurement is not to break them apart. It is to let each speak. Myth gives shape to feeling. Measurement gives shape to fact. Between them lies a generous space where awe can live without fear. In that space, we ask careful questions about alignments and tides, and accept answers that whisper rather than shout. The camera drifts down, touching rooftops and water. Somewhere, a researcher watches a narrow band of light and writes a number beside it. Somewhere else, a storyteller repeats the old names for the evening star and smiles. Neither is wrong. Both are part of the same long listening. In the final shots, the glow of the planet thins to a silver thread. The sea goes quiet. The wind lowers to a hush. If there is a secret in these cycles, it will reveal itself the way dawn does, slowly, kindly, without haste. Until then, the light remains, a small certainty at the edge of night, and in its gentle certainty lives a question that does not quite close. Light falls into the spectrograph, like rain into a quiet pond. It gathers, settles, and spreads. Across the detector, thin lines bloom and shift, each one a soft note drawn from starlight. Venus, a bright lamp in the morning sky, lets its reflected glow slide through the instrument's slit. The telescope holds still. The dome is a cradle of silence. Somewhere between the solar lines and the planet's own echo, a hidden pattern waits, small as a whisper, patient as dust. In this calm, numbers arrive like droplets, wavelength, intensity, time. The team speaks in low voices, as if not to disturb the light itself. They know the spectrum by memory, deep valleys where sunlight is absorbed, narrow peaks like bright threads. But tonight the familiar map feels alive, restless. A subtle shape shifts at a few special wavelengths. It builds, it softens, it returns. If it were noise, it would scatter. If it were a mistake, it would not keep time with the world. They turn to cross-correlation, the simple, steady tool that listens for echoes inside the noise. It lifts one spectrum against another, slides it forward and back, and asks a patient question. Where do the patterns line up? On the screen, A low hill rises out of the static, then another, like waves finding a shore. The hill centers itself on precise wavelengths that match charged particles, dust, and ions. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is a careful tap, 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 a tiny cadence just behind the bright glare of solar lines. You can picture it. Venus slides through sunlight, and the spectrograph hears the brush of something thin, something electric. The narrator's voice stays slow. Science is slow. Wonder is patient. The team takes another hour, then two, testing the cadence against different reference frames, rotating the instrument, shifting the calibration lamp. Every path returns to the same modest rise. A cosmic whisper, too careful to be noise. They move through possibilities like stepping stones across a stream. Could microcrystals form in the upper air? Tiny facets that turn the glare into a pattern. Could charged aerosols, born from chemistry at dusk and dawn, leave a fingerprint on the way light scatters? Could lightning-born ions climb into the thin heights and ride the wind like sparks caught in a draft? Venus holds a long record of storms in its thick veil. Not the rattling thunder you know from Earth, but something older, slower, dampened by pressure and heat. Still, charges separate. Fields grow. The sky hums. The team looks back through old data. In the archives, earlier spectra sit like pressed leaves in a book. Most are clean. A few show hints barely there, a shadow of the same rhythm, only visible when you know to look. The memory of it makes the present data feel warmer. They compare the times. Morning terminator versus evening, changing altitudes, different angles along the orbit. The cadence is stronger where sunlight cuts through a thicker path, where the dawn edge is drawn thin and long. It weakens when the planet tilts, when clouds hide high layers. This is not a simple on-off switch. It is a set of doors opening and closing in a soft breeze. They test the instrument's mood. The spectrograph is a careful machine, but it can dream up its own ghost's bad pixels. A drifting focus, scattered light that plays tricks. The team takes flat fields, dark frames, lamp spectra. They mirror the signal across the detector. They rotate the slit. The anomaly moves with Venus, not with the device. One by one, the ghosts drift away. Cross-correlation again. The technique is humble, but tonight it feels like a compass. The reference library includes ions common in stormy air. Oxygen, sulfur, chlorine. It includes molecules that grow on dust grains and flake away in heat. It includes the signature shapes carved by tiny crystals, the way a snowflake would stamp light if it passed through a beam. The best match is not pure. It is a blend, a choir rather than a solo. A small rise where charged dust might speak, another where ions could hum. None are final, but together they trace a theme. Charged dust riding the wind like an ancient traveler. Picture the view above those endless clouds. The planet turns. The sun watches from afar. A thin layer of fine particles, some shaped by chemistry, some carrying extra electrons, drifts along wide belts. The particles meet light in 1,000 tiny collisions. Each meeting changes the light by a hair, bending or absorbing at exact wavelengths. The pattern is too faint for eyes, but the spectrograph hears it, the way your ear can hear a distant bell in the hush before sleep. They make a map out of time. Point by point, they record the strength of the cadence as Venus moves across the sky. The curve swells where the planet's morning edge presents a longer path through the haze. It dips when the air grows calm. The team plots the curve against wind models gathered from past missions, trajectories drawn by probes that fell like careful raindrops into the hot air. The match is imperfect, but kind. Where winds should rise, the cadence grows. Where winds should slow, it rests. A fragile agreement, yet real enough to hold in the hand. Still, They are not satisfied. Spectra tell stories, but some lines are missing. The team speaks of aerosols, little floating homes for charge, platforms for reactions, seeds for crystals. They speak of ions forged in lightning, not by thunder's crash, but by slow discharges along cloud edges where fields are strong and the air refuses to break. The narrator reminds you, Venusian lightning has long been argued, a messenger glimpsed and doubted, a harbinger that never writes its name with a clear stroke. But if it exists, its children ions and charged dust would mark the light, even when the bolts remain hidden. The telescope pauses at midnight. Air cools. Mirrors breathe. The spectrograph waits for the planet to lift above a bank of thin cloud near the horizon. While they wait, the team writes notes. They keep their language simple, almost quiet. They mark the wavelengths where the rise appears. They list the tests performed. They imagine new ones. Polarizers to sort scattered light by angle. Higher resolution settings to split fine features. Simultaneous imaging to watch cloud belts shift. The room is dim. Screens paint the walls with a soft glow. A cup of tea steams beside a keyboard. Someone yawns. Someone smiles. When? Venus returns to clear air. The cadence returns as well, like a familiar tide. The team tries a narrow slice around the key wavelengths, letting more light fall there. The hill in the cross correlation grows taller, not by much, but enough to feel. Hope is a gentle thing. It does not race the heart. It steadies the hand. The data pile up. In this pile, the team reads a path forward. If the signature is born from charged dust or microcrystals, it will change with altitude, with local time, with the planet's long waves of weather. If it is helped by lightning-born ions, it may flicker with the slow rhythm of electrical storms. They speak of orbits and trajectories. They speak of a future instrument tuned like an ear to the exact notes heard tonight. They speak of flight paths that cross the planet's edge where sunlight is thin, where the signature is strongest. But some answers live where only storms can guide. The team knows that spectrographs on the ground can only listen from afar. To truly know, they will need to chase the storm itself, to send a quiet probe or a drifting balloon into the gentle violence above those clouds. Not to fight the wind, but to ride with it. To taste the charged dust with tiny sensors. To hold a microcrystal in a trap of light and weigh its charge, count its facets, and watch it glow. To feel, for a few hours, the pulse of a world where pressure is heavy and the horizon is always near. The narrator takes a breath and lets the room grow still. The telescope hums. Outside, dawn starts to wash the observatory in pale gray. Inside, the instrument gathers the last spectrum of the night. Venus brightens the margin of morning, then sinks. The lines on the screen lose contrast as the sky warms. The cadence is still there, small and faithful. Later, when the team steps out into the cold, they carry the shape of that cadence in their heads. It is a memory now, but it will return in plots and figures, in gentle arguments and slow tests. The pattern points to charged dust, to aerosols, to ions born in light and in the quiet edges of long storms. It points to travelers riding wind across a planet wrapped in a veil. They do not raise their pulse. They do not rush their words. They pack the night into a few careful sentences and promise to listen again. Above them, the sky is simple, blue, and empty. But the mystery stays close, near as breath, an unexplained rhythm in a beam of light, a soft glow around a hard question. The instruments sleep. The data waits. And in the drifting quiet, one could almost sense that another secret was about to reveal itself far above the furnace. The night breathes in slow silver. Clouds roll like a dark ocean, and every so often, a faint flash stutters across the ceiling of the world quiet, spaced, drifting. It is not the jagged strike you expect from a storm. It is more like the blink of a distant pulsar, a soft pulse under a heavy blanket. The air itself seems to listen, and the horizon holds still, as if waiting for an answer. Instruments do the listening for us. Metal ears tuned to radio whispers. Glass eyes set to catch optical ghosts. Spectrographs dissect the glimmer, searching for a clue in color and time. What they hear is a memory of supernova crackle, but gentler, sleep-soft, as if the universe is humming to an infant planet. The signal feels old and new at once, a pattern we know, in a voice we have never heard. Below, the storm builds with ordinary thunder, the kind that once shook the bones of sailors and farmers. But here, miles above the ground, thunder is a far hum thickened, filtered, turned into velvet. The cloud tops form a sea of shadows. When lightning brushes that sea, charged grains stir like plankton, each grain rising on updrafts, trading electrons in the churn. A filament glows, an arc crawls, and the anomaly brightens, as if offered to the sky by unseen hands. Sensors on silent balloons drift along these storm belts. They taste ozone and the sharp sugar of ionized air. They feel the tug of electric fields that form and unform like tides. Every flash writes a line in the log. Time, brightness, spectrum, rise and decay. The rhythm becomes a cradle. Flash, hush, shimmer. Between those beats lives a quiet interval where something hidden might step forward, if it even exists. Could these sparks be a kind of gate? A fortress door of charged air, opening just long enough to release a messenger? The idea sounds grand, but the measurements nod in that direction. Models show the signal's path tracing storm tracks like a scout following a road. It bows to wind, slips along the equator, and then, as if finding a river, spreads outward on the solar wind. Tiny, steady, patient like a paper boat, set adrift into the great current of space. At first, the team had expected noise. They had prepared to subtract the storm, to peel away the growl and spit of lightning, to show nothing underneath. Instead, the act of peeling revealed a soft glow that grew brighter at the storm's touch. Lightning did not drown the signature. It primed it. When a bolt rose through the cloud, the anomaly lifted with it, as though the spark cleared a path through the crowded air, a corridor for the whisper to climb. Cameras on orbit, slow, medium, geosynchronous, turn their lenses to the cloud anvils. They watch sprites and halos bloom above the storm tops, red and blue and white. These high-altitude lights are known. Quick bursts of plasma, brief as a blink, large as a city. But here the pattern is slower, calmer. It is the quiet echo after the shout, a veil that settles once the thunder has gone by. The film remains soothing. The world looks older, gentler, patient. On the ground, arrays listen in very low frequency bands, the long, long waves that wrap the planet like a bell tone. Lightning sends whistler waves sliding along the magnetic field lines, down into the night side and back. The anomaly rides in that company, but it is not a whistler. It is too smooth and too steady. The instruments record it anyway, in case the messenger prefers to travel without a name. A lab far from the storms begins to replay the sky in miniature. A narrow chamber fills with dust and a thin gas. Electrodes whisper instead of shout. They aim to coax the tiniest flash, the kind that dust can shepherd. In the glow, grains clump and separate, release and capture charge, like dancers switching partners. The spectrograph notes a faint line and then another. These are small lines, humble as pencil marks in a notebook. Still, they align with the sky maps. The lab workers stand a little straighter. In old notebooks, someone had once written, "Thunderstorms and the magnetosphere talk." It was a guess, a feeling. Now new plots show loops between storm tops, the ionosphere, and the lanes of near-Earth space. The loops are not loud. They are not a parade. They are more like circulation, a slow heartbeat, a system staying alive. Each loop leaves a trace of the anomaly behind, like the scent of rain after lightning has melted back into night. What sets the first spark if storms only prime it? If the storm is a key, who carved the lock? Eyes turn outward. The team recalls how dust drifts across the orbit of a planet the way pollen floats across a pond. Comets shed, asteroids grind, micrometeorites fall. Each grain is an ancient traveler, a messenger in its own right, carrying a charge, carrying a memory. When these grains meet the top of a storm, the meeting may not only be heat and light, it may be a handshake that passes along a secret. The balloon team flies again, higher this time, near the thin blue edge where the dark begins. Their microphones, tuned to frequencies too low for human ears, hear a slow drumbeat when lightning fires below. The drumbeat lines up with the flash, hush, shimmer that the cameras see. The data look like a poem, a line, a space, a line. And between those lines, a ghostly line of its own, a continuity that should not be there, unless something is using the storm the way a ship uses a lighthouse. They follow the line on a map. It bends along the storm belt, then drifts north with the season, then east with a jet stream turn, then up along a magnetic line, then outward, thinning, like a breath let go. The solar wind picks it up. The signature becomes faint but not lost, a whisper inside a greater whisper. It is hard to trace further, but not impossible. The trail suggests it leaves the cradle of our air and takes to the wider dark. From orbit, Earth's night shines in many languages. Lightning scribbles quick script across the tropics. City grids write their regular code. Above both, nature's own lighthouse flashes, tender, steady. The cameras stay open, gathering long exposures that show the lightning's quick rage and the anomaly's patient glow in a single still. The overlay looks like a double story. Anger and calm, bolt and halo, noise and signal. And then another pattern. The anomaly likes the edges of storm shields, where anvils spread thin and the cloud top breathes cold. It lingers where the air is cleanest of dust born from the ground, but not free of dust that fell from space. Tiny grains that did not burn, that survived the plunge as sparks in the upper air, seem to live here the way seeds live in a wet field. The team wonders if those grains carry surface charges, or even tiny magnetic hints that the storm can lift and arrange. A plane crosses the boundary and dips its wing. Inside, a small spectrograph stares through a window. The pilot reports a smooth ride, just a slow rise and fall. The instrument notes a faint uptick as the wingtip enters a sheet of very cold air. The signal is not loud. It is not dramatic. But it is true, repeated on 3 flights, 2 seasons, different coasts. The pattern holds. The anomaly is faithful to thin, cold, quiet places where lightning brushes the top before curling back down. A telescope on a mountain takes its turn. It looks not at the storm, but above it, past the halo, out toward the higher night. There, the field is sparse. A few meteors cut their lines. A faint band of the Milky Way breathes. The telescope holds steady on a patch where the anomaly once rose. No stars brighten. No satellite glides by. Still, the detector counts a slow ripple, like a tide coming through the sky. It is barely there, yet the timing fits the last ground flash. The ripple feels like a note held between instruments in a quiet orchestra. Memory helps. The team remembers old flare events when the sun spat charged particles that shook the magnetosphere. The anomaly did not grow during those loud solar days. It grew during the days just after, when the space weather settled, when the solar wind smoothed, when the planet's fields returned to their long, slow sway. The messenger, if that is what it is, prefers a calm river to a flood. The models accept this like a set of rules for a delicate experiment. Storms are the primer. Clean, cold air is the stage. Charged dust is the actor. The ionosphere is the balcony. The solar wind is the road to the next town. None of this requires a mind, only physics. Yet the pattern feels purposeful the way a spiderweb looks purposeful, a structure built for signals to cross. You might be listening to this with eyes half closed, the rhythm of flash, hush, shimmer drifting through your thoughts. Imagine the sound in your head, a low tone that leans into silence, returns, leans again. In that leaning, there is comfort. In that comfort, an opening. Many things can walk through a door left ajar, but only one thing will leave a footprint like this. The team does not know its name, so they keep calling it the Anomaly, the hidden messenger, the cosmic whisper waiting for a line in the log that says, "Found." There are doubts, as there should be. A cable hums where it should not. A battery warms. A balloon rope sings in the wind. All these are trimmed, checked, and measured out of the records. The signal remains. It is easy to see what we want in the static of the world, but this does not act like want. It acts like a tide. It acts like the way a comet's tail bends without touching it, obeying forces that were here long before we knew the words for them. In the control room, night workers speak softly, as if their voices might scratch the surface of the film. They place the new plots next to the old ones. The loops look tighter now. The storm belts look like roads, the lightning like mile markers. The solar wind is the highway that everything eventually joins, drifting past orbit and out toward the great dark lanes between planets. If a message wished to travel without being seen, this would be a plausible route. Amaze watchers with lightning, then slip off into the hush. The earth turns. Another line of storms rises where warm ocean feeds the sky. The cameras and arrays prepare. The team does not seek drama. They seek the small and the patient. They seek the subtle shoulder tap on the back of a very loud event. When the lightning brushes the cloud sea, charged grains stir once more. And again, the anomaly brightens, polite, hopeful, as though the sky itself has been offered a quiet gift. Soon, they will test dust captured from the high air, particles sifted by filters at the edge of space. They will watch how these grains charge and discharge, how they cling and release, how they sing in fields like strings teased by a bow. They will look for magnetite slivers, for ice-wrapped minerals, for tiny specks from ancient comets that cross the plane of our orbit before we learn to name orbits at all. If the first spark begins in such a speck, they want to feel the moment it happens. For now, the film stays soothing. The storm belts glow and fade. The planet sleeps and wakes. The signature follows, gentle and regular, never begging attention, just remaining. It is a behavior more than a beacon. It is a habit written into the air. If storms are the primer and the sky the gate, then perhaps dust is the hand that knocks. No one claims certainty. The data prefer hints over headlines. Yet there is a quiet joy in that. Wonder grows best in partial light. Hope lives in the space between noise and music. And in that space, the signal keeps its promise. It will be there after the next flash, and the next, whispering through the upper air like a traveler who knows the road by heart. Far above the furnace, another faint flash arrives and drifts away. The sea of cloud settles. The instruments rest but remain awake. The charged grains float, then descend, then lift again with the smallest breeze. Somewhere, a tiny speck falls from space and touches the edge of a storm. The glow fades into the horizon, but in its fading, it carries a question that lingers in every watcher's mind. Under a soft glow of starlight, the solar system drifts like a slow river. Earth moves through old streams shed by comets and shattered meteor bodies. Venus, wrapped in bright cloud, follows its own steady path, and it too crosses those ancient lanes. Tonight, the lens widens. We look not for flaming stones or bright streaks. We look for something smaller, Micron grains, tiny as breath, light as a sigh, float like a gentle veil across the planet's road. They fall so softly you could miss them, the way you might miss a single snowflake in the dark. This is the rain the chapter speaks of, dust from a quiet visitor. Each particle bears a history, a broken comet's memory, a lost moon's whisper, a grain of rock charged by the sun. The orbits intersect, and the veil passes through the upper air of Venus. No thunder follows. No storm announces itself. Only a drifting shadow and a fragile shimmer, as if the planet is turning through a field of unseen pollen. At perihelion, when Venus comes closest to the sun, the solar wind stiffens like a breeze turning cold. The wind packs energy into the dust, bending trajectories, shaking electric charges awake. The particles rub against light itself. They pick up electrons. They sing in radio whispers that instruments can sometimes catch. In the brightness, the veil glows a little more, not to our eyes, but to the spectrograph and the antenna. A curve rises on a screen. A faint line sharpens. The anomaly swells, then ebbs, like a soft tide brushing the cloud tops and slipping away again. Observers track the pattern, tracing it against no meteor streams. There is a schedule to the sky. Trails from long-period comets return like seasons. Debris from short-period comets arrives like regular rain. For a while, the data align. The rise in particle counts matches expected paths. The timing obeys what the star maps predict. But then, something deviates. The curve splits from the calendar by hours, then by days. The radio whisper bends in a way it should not. The light scattered by the grains carries a color just a shade outside the list we know. It is not a threat. It does not crash or burn. It is a messenger with no name, a subtle reply to questions we have not yet formed. In the control rooms and quiet offices, researchers speak in low voices. Past studies return to the table. Spacecraft readings, radar peaks, faint glows near dawn and dusk. Each piece is small. Each piece is a clue. Some think of exogenic dust material arriving from beyond the planet mixing with native chemistry in the upper air. Sulfur, chlorine, carbon, metal ions, all moving in thin layers. A stranger meets a host. A grain meets a cloud. Something happens in that instant of touch. A charge trades hands. A thin film forms on the particle's surface. It scatters light in a new way, or it releases a tiny note on contact, a tone the instruments can hear. What looks like noise turns into a phrase. What looks like a drift becomes a design. No one calls it proof. They call it a path. If the messenger is real, it leaves fingerprints, altered charge, odd polarization, a signature in the way the grain falls afterward. That means the test is simple in spirit and hard in practice. To know, you must stand in the stream and catch a grain mid-flight. You must hold it before the touch is faded, before the charge has leaked away. So a mission concept begins to take shape. Not in noise or rush, but in clean lines and quiet plans. A craft would move just where the veil is thickest, skimming the high air like a careful swimmer. It would carry collectors that sip the wind without waking it, perhaps aerial tiles to cradle the grains without crushing them, perhaps fields that slow each particle without scorching it. It would listen with radio ears tuned to the hum of charged dust. It would watch with spectrographs ready to read the faint color a grain gives off when it meets the planet's breath. Trajectory planners plot the arc. Enter near the dawn side, where the veil first meets the light. Linger near the evening, where particles sink. Trace loops that cross predicted streams, and also the times that do not fit. Instruments would open only when needed and sleep when not, keeping the craft calm. Even the motion must be gentle. The design respects the mood of the phenomenon. This is a soft tide, and the ship must match it. On the ground, telescopes would help. They would watch the sky around Venus for the glow of forward scattered sunlight from dust. The effect is slight, a pale ring in the data more than a ring in the eye. The timing between that glow and the insight who counts would test the schedule the models claim. If the glow appears again when the ship's signals arise, the link grows strong. If the glow appears when no stream is due, the mystery grows stronger still. Old records return with new eyes. Past flybys noted small spikes in charged particles that never found a home in any known stream. Past ground-based spectra showed a shy tilt in polarization that nobody could place, a shape set aside as instrument drift. In hindsight, the notes rhyme. A memory flickers through the dataset as if the hidden messenger had been speaking all along, but we were listening in the wrong key. The idea that dust can carry messages is not new. In the story of planets, grains have always been messengers. They bring water. They bring carbon. They seed clouds. They paint tales across the dark. Here, the message may be simpler and stranger. It could be a pattern that forms only when exogenic dust touches native chemistry, a process that tells us what the upper air is made of, and how it changes with the sun. The messenger is not a mind. It is an event. But events can speak. In the soft regime, where surface meets cloud, where charge meets light, we hear it. As the concept matures, the plan adds small experiments. A tiny oven warms a collected grain and measures what it releases. A laser tests how the surface scatters. A microbalance weighs the fragile mass to learn how much it gained in the sky. Even failure would teach. If no change appears, then the anomaly must live elsewhere, in fields, in wave motion, in some delicate beat between winds. If change appears, then we have caught the reply in our hands. The narration slows and steadies. Night widens around the planet. The veil is thin, but it is not empty. Imagine drifting above the clouds, moving at the speed of orbit, and holding out your hand. In that hand, the smallest traveler arrives from a path older than cities. You cannot see it. You can only sense its passing by what it changes. Maybe your suit's radio picks up a hush, a tone like air across a bottle. Maybe your visor shows a tiny halo as the grain sails on, charged now, altered now, something slightly new. Those who chart the streams keep counting. Those who model the winds keep adjusting. The anomaly swells, then ebbs, with a rhythm that feels like music. Some call it forbiddance because it does not fit the neat list. But the universe seldom fits our first lists. It leans and bends. It allows secret rooms where simple rules meet and make new shapes. Here, in the region where dust and chemistry speak, a hint of design flickers. What would it mean to listen well? It would mean patience. It would mean orbits that return and instruments that last through quiet seasons. It would mean trusting low signals and refusing to panic when they drift. It would mean remembering that not all visitors arrive with fire. Some arrive with silence. Some leave only a soft trace on the clouds, a memory that repeats, then slips, then repeats again. The camera pulls back. Venus turns like a pearl lit from within. Far off, a comet sheds another layer to space. The trails stretch, thin as spider silk, across a plane of light. Earth crosses them. So does Venus, so do all the planets, sooner or later. Each crossing is a chance for the oldest material to touch the newest air. Each crossing writes a line we can read if we go near and if we go gently. We hold the idea in our hands, a hidden messenger, born in the interplay between exogenic dust and native chemistry. Not a warning, not a shout, a whisper shaped by touch. We may never hear words in it, but we may learn its rhythm, and in that rhythm, learn the upper sky, its charges, its grains, its soft tides linked to the sun. The path forward is clear and careful. Stand in the stream, catch a grain mid-flight, and listen. The glow around the world fades toward the horizon. Instruments dim. Models rest for the night. Somewhere in the dark, a tiny traveler keeps falling, patient and timeless. The veil passes on, delicate as sleep. And in that drifting quiet, the question remains, floating from particle to cloud, what small secret waits inside the next gentle touch? They draw the plan in quiet strokes. The anomaly moves like a drifting shadow far ahead, and the engineers keep their voices low. In lamplight, the table becomes a sky. Paper rings for orbits, a pencil tip for a ship. A line is traced, erased, redrawn softer, truer, calmer. They are learning how to touch a storm without waking it, how to meet an ancient traveler with the grace of open hands. The tone is careful. The heartbeat stays slow. Hope hums in the wires like a soft current. The first idea floats. Not a winged lander, not a single daring plunge, but a quiet flotilla that behaves like weather. Helium balloons light as breathing settle into a layer where the winds flow but do not tear. They carry gondolas the size of small chairs, each one a listening room sealed from the cold. A spectrograph waits to taste starlight as it filters through cloud. A dust analyzer reads the scars on tiny grains. Electric field booms unfold like silver reeds. Radio sniffers lean into the hush, tuned to a faint cosmic whisper. Nothing shouts. Everything listens. The second idea skins. Air-braking orbiters, smooth as river stones, dip again and again into the upper air, letting drag shave away their speed. Each pass is a measured brush with heat. Bellies glow, then cool. Orbits tighten like a spiral shell. At Apopsis, the spacecraft call home, sharing winds, maps, and corridors that look safe. They are shepherds from above, tracking each balloon's slow dance, shaping future passes with small burns. They do not fight the planet. They learn its rhythm and glide with it. The third idea falls. Microprobes cup-sized, simple, brave drop in soft arcs. They do not hit. They kiss. Crumple shells close like a hand around an egg. Cushions pop. Heat tiles sigh. Parachutes open like dust flowers. When they reach the cloud deck, they whisper measurements. Wind speed, dust charge, droplets that are not rain but almost static that nips like winter on a doorknob. The probes are too small to live long. Their batteries are brief candles. Their gift is first touch, the texture of air and the memory of landing like a sigh. Every tool has a reason, a place, and a narrow window of time. The atmosphere is not still. It super-rotates, carrying its own weather around faster than the ground below. A wrong entry angle becomes a tumble. A late berm becomes a miss no correction can save. The trajectory lead draws the window, a brushstroke thin as a hair across a clock face, centered on the days near perihelion when the anomaly will burn brightest. Alignment, not force, is the art. The world will be closest to its sun. The sky, richest with signal. They map the ballet. Launch when Earth tilts just so, and the transfer arc opens like a door. Coast along a long, cold curve. Turn the heat shield forward. Spend fuel like breath. At the appointed moment, the orbiter dips the capture gently, then spirals inward through careful air brakes. Balloons release when forecast winds promise a cradle rather than a slap. Microprobes wait for a passing eddy that lines up like a runway. None of this is loud. Even the countdowns will sound like a bedtime rhyme. On the screens, the timeline tightens. Launch windows that once stretched for weeks shrink to days, then hours. The anomaly climbs in brightness forecasts, and the room's pulse quickens with it. Funding meetings bloom on calendars like sudden clouds. The narrator, outside the glass, keeps the pace slow. Breathe, measure, confirm. They cannot rush the sky. They can only be ready when it opens. Schedules compress into colored bars. Margins become thin halos of safety. To land inside those halos is to keep the promise. Night makes the instruments feel like characters with steady dreams. The spectrograph waits for a slit of light, ready to split glow into colors and read secrets in narrow lines. Sodium bright, carbon soft, a faint band warmed by dust. The dust analyzer is patient. Motes will strike its plates and sing their mass in tiny notes. Electric field booms, spindly and shy, reach beyond the bust to sense the hair on the air charge rising and falling like a tide. Radio sniffers tilt toward the hush, hunting a whisper that might be nothing or might be new. Those who shaped the era-breaking Nomath is not a shield. It is a promise that must be kept. Past missions taught this with scorched paint and tight throats. Wingless craft can surf if the angle is right and the skin is strong. Models run in loops, searching for hidden teeth. Density spikes, crosswinds, vortices that could yaw an orbiter and turn grace into tumble. Margins are added like blankets. Panels take more heat than needed. Guidance tolerates gusts worse than expected. Safety is made by attention, not by luck. In the hallway, a corkboard holds printed orbits like paper moons. Pushpins mark each pass. Pencil notes outline a pressure corridor where balloons can live, a gentle band where envelopes neither burst nor freeze. Taped beside them is a Polaroid, coffee cups, tired smiles, a grinning engineer with a post-it on their forehead perihelion. Humor, like tape, holds the pieces together. It steadies hands when numbers feel like waves pressing a narrow shore. It turns fear into focus and waiting into work. Outside, the sky moves in its ancient way. Planets do not wait for debate. Orbits march, steady and silent. If they miss this chance, geometry will drift, and the traveler may be dim when they return. Hope, awe, and fear share the same chair, hands folded, eyes on the clock. The narrator keeps the heartbeat slow, counting backward not to hurry time, but to soften it, so each decision lands with care. Precision becomes a kindness, offered to machines that will meet the wind. They speak of money because they must. Slides show risk bars and costumes. The gentle flotilla is lighter than a heavy lander, but more complex to conduct. Each piece depends on the tone set by the others. A single failure could ripple through the ballet. A single success could unlock 1,000 questions. Will funding and focus hold? The question sits like a sealed envelope no one wants to open. Yet hands keep moving, soldering, checking, documenting, signing. Doubt attends. Practice answers. Night belongs to the watchers. In the radio room, a technician logs hours where only Earth hums. In the clean room, a balloon envelope lies like a sleeping moon while gloved hands test seams again. In the control lab, an alarm waits for a rehearsal in the sky. A known comet crossing a thin line. A drill for timing and pointing. Across the world, small observatories post light curves to a shared thread. People who may never meet lean toward the same soft glow and hold the same patient breath. The plan stays gentle because gentleness is strong. Balloons will not fight the wind. They will ride it. Orbiters will not punch downward. They will lean into drag. Probes will not boast of endurance. They will offer truth in their first soft minutes and accept the rest. This is not a war with physics. It is a conversation in quiet voices. If you were in the room, you would see maps glow and hear entry corridor, and picture a hallway in a house of air with doors opening one by one. Now, the story holds present tense. The anomaly brightens. Models sharpen. Launch vehicles breathe cool gas in waiting tanks far away. Teams rehearse failure trees, then fold them away and rehearse again. The spectrograph's calibration lamp clicks like a tiny lighthouse. In a sealed box, a dust simulator flings grains so the analyzer will not be surprised. Electric booms unfold beside a low fan that plays the wind's tune. The calm is dense, like a pause between ocean sets, and no one breaks it. They remember in past tense. There were missions that hurried and met a wall of heat, probes that did not separate, parachutes that did not bloom, orbiters that met the air without respect and left as streaks. Those lessons have edges. They cut the plan into clear shapes. The new blueprint carries scars from old attempts like talismans, each one a promise not to forget. The future will ask for more courage. The past has already paid for a better map. They allow themselves to imagine what might come. If the flotilla finds a hidden pattern in the clouds, it could point to chemistry that has been rumor and hope. If the radio whisper repeats, it may be a natural process we do not yet know how to name. If the dust tells of far comets long ago, then the traveler may be a messenger from distant fields, a harbinger of stories older than charts. They do not promise discovery. They promise attempts worthy of the question and listening worthy of the answer. Time shortens with kindness. The schedule tightens not to punish, but to focus. Day by day, the blueprint moves from paper to metal, from metal to motion, from motion to listening. They are not chasing the traveler. They are arranging to meet it with open hands. Somewhere, a midnight break ends. A family photo returns to a wallet. A lab door clicks. This is how courage looks without speeches. A torque wrench set right. A checklist assigned. A crate sealed with careful tape. A yawn behind a glove. Outside, the air is cool and the stars thin as the world turns. On the corkboard, the paper moons stay still. Inside the plan, everything moves. The orbit bends. The clock's thin hand sweeps its quiet path. The blueprint holds steady, light at the center and weight at the edges, as if carried on a breath. In the radio room, the spectrum is clean. In the clean room, a balloon is folded like a promise. In the model, a probe rides a curve that ends in a landing more like a sigh than a sound. At last there is a hush. Not silence, rather a steady tone, the kind you hear when you stop trying too hard. A soft glow gathers at the edge of the world. Far ahead, the traveler keeps its slow course. The flotilla waits in pieces, ready to become one. In that waiting, the room feels vast and very small at once, the cradle of a question rocking in the calm. Screens dim, coffee cools, and the building's hum settles to a lower note. The glow fades into the horizon, but in its fading, something quiet and hidden seems to draw closer, waiting to be understood. They hold coffee with both hands, as if warming small planets in the cradle of silence. The control rooms hum with a soft, steady current. Screens paint faces in gentle blues and violets, tiny nebulae drifting over cheekbones, pulsing in pupils. The air carries a quiet click of keyboards and the low breath of cooling fans. Outside, night lays a gentle veil over the observatory roofs. Inside, the anomaly waits like a polite guest, the kind that speaks only when spoken to. It is not a warning. It is a whisper. People lean closer to listen. Monitors show curves of light. A graph rises and eases, as if following a tidal pull. Another display holds a map of orbit tracks and predicted passes, thin white arcs climbing across the dark. Someone adjusts the spectrograph readout. A line sharpens. A notch appears where starlight dips, the way a pebble makes rings on a pond. Elsewhere, a radio dish rotates to a new azimuth. The motor turns with a patient sound, like a giant clock resetting itself to midnight. All of it says the same thing. Be still. Be careful. Listen. They are not alone, though each sits at a separate station. In a small lab down the hall, two researchers whisper about timing windows and trajectory closures. If the anomaly keeps its pace, a clean pass occurs before dawn. If it shifts, they'll need to wait. A projection of Earth turns slowly on a nearby screen. Cities wink like distant constellations. Oceans wear a soft glow. The world looks calm from here, as if breathing in sleep. Someone tightens a headset and calls out a checklist item. Telemetry nominal. Another voice answers. Copy nominal. Between tasks, memories slip in. One technician remembers the first comet she saw, a thin brushstroke over her childhood sky. It was winter. Her father had lifted her onto a fence rail so she could see past the roofline. She remembers how the tail seemed to ride across the night, like a note from an ancient traveler. Another team member remembers a meteor he watched from a farm road. It stitched a silver thread above the fields, so quick he doubted it, then so bright he could not. Those bright moments never left them. They are why, even now, they lean closer when the universe speaks. A junior engineer adjusts a model of the Anomaly's path. The lines look gentle, but the math is exacting. A fraction of a degree. A whisper of velocity. Trajectory windows close like petals as the hours pass. He checks the covariance and sips cold coffee. He has run these numbers before, but tonight they feel different. Not heavier, just closer. Across the table, a colleague checks the telescope schedule. Clouds are clear. The guiding stars are steady. The mount will hold. In the corner, the printer gives a soft click and spills out a set of rehearsal passes for morning. The anomaly is not dramatic. That's the secret. It is consistent, almost shy. Its signal rises and rests with a heartbeat's patience. It turns up at the right ascension as predicted, then drifts, then returns. If it were a person, it would be the friend who knocks once, then waits at the door. Inside the data, there is form without boast. No sharp edges. No shout. Each new packet arrives with a humble timestamp, a short stack of numbers that only say, "I am here again." In a world that loves loud things, this quiet is a relief. A camera feed shows the big dish under starlight. Frost gleams on the rim like powdered moon. A technician steps out to check a cable run, breath rising in white curls. He pauses at the rail and looks up. The Milky Way arcs overhead, a broad path of starlight that makes every worry feel small. In the past, he chased storms with friends. He loved the edge of power, the lightning and roar. Now he listens to something softer. He thinks of all the exoplanets tucked into that river of light. He thinks of the long arc of orbit and the brief arc of one life, and he goes back inside to finish the checklist. On another floor, a tiny office glows with a single desk lamp. A data analyst reviews the spectrograph frames by hand, line by line. The plot is clean. The dip is real. She writes notes in a narrow notebook. Wavelength, depth, duration. She recalls a professor who told her, long ago, that science is just a way to reply to starlight. You ask. You wait. You answer. The analyst opens her window a crack and hears the wind brush the building. She imagines the anomaly as wind made visible. A hidden messenger shaped by distances the mind can't hold, yet somehow gentle enough to touch. The night deepens, and with it the sense of shared wonder. They speak softly, but their work is precise. Every checklist item is a small vow kept. There are no heroes here, only steady hands. The rehearsal passes for morning lay stacked and ready. Antenna slews, telescope locks, recording racks primed, software set to save and mirror. Final systems check sits on the whiteboard like an appointment with dawn. This is the calm before the doors slide open, the quiet part where breath slows and thought clears. It is the place where a fragile hope becomes a plan. Around the world, other rooms keep time with them. A university lab on one continent, a mountaintop telescope on another, a radio array in a wide valley where coyotes sometimes sing at night. Their clocks are synths to the second. Their servers trade packets under the oceans, light flickering along fiber like minnows in a dark stream. The anomaly threads through them all, a shared note in different rooms. They compare numbers. They adjust models. They seal gaps. Humanity listens together, and in the listening, a kind of closeness forms. It is not loud. It is not glow or applause. It is a quiet braid of attention. If you were here, you would notice how the room itself seems to exhale. The lights dim just a little more. Someone laughs gently at a small joke. Another person rubs their eyes and leans back, letting the chair creak. You would hear the soft clicks of relay boards and the faint, insect silver hiss of cooling fans. You might smell the coffee bitter, hopeful. You might feel the floor's low vibration when the dish outside turns a few degrees. You would feel, perhaps, that you were standing at the edge of a gentle ocean, waiting for a wave that will not knock you down, but carry you somewhere you have wished to go. Discovery belongs to the past tense. Each earlier night added a stitch. They solved small mysteries with patient care, an instrument bias here, a timing offset there. They cleared out ghosts the way a lighthouse keeper wipes salt from glass. They learned the anomaly's habits, its careful cadence across the sky. They rested when they could and returned when they must. The story is simple because it is honest. You wake, you look up, you learn. That is how comets became friends instead of omens. That is how meteors became memories instead of fears. Speculation belongs to the future. If a message is possible, what could anyone say in return? A thank you, perhaps, for the long light. A promise to listen better, to do less harm, to honor each orbit and each ocean. Maybe just a simple greeting in the language of physics and patience frequency. Interval, a rhythm that even distance can understand. They imagine this. Quietly, not as a speech, but as a pattern, a small repeating kindness sent in the dark. A hello that needs no translation. The present belongs to the anomaly itself. It comes again, steady as breath. The readouts rise with a calm insistence. Notes are taken. Times are logged. An engineer taps a pencil on the desk in a soft 3-beat now here again and smiles without meaning to. The friendliness of the signal isn't science, and they know it. Yet the feeling remains. The universe is vast, and this moment is small, and somehow both truths make the room feel safe. The friend at the door knocks again. Patient? Sure. Midnight passes. The clock slipped toward morning. The stack of rehearsal passes waits for hands to lift it. The final systems checklist is capped and underlined, a quiet promise tucked near a keyboard. Someone powers down one monitor to rest their eyes and watches the screen fade from nebula blue to a drifting shadow. For a heartbeat, the glass holds a ghost of the room. Then it gives way to the soft black of night. In the hallway, a window shows frost on the railing. The world outside is still. A stray cat crosses the lot and disappears, tail held like a question mark. Inside, the people stay with their instruments, steady as lighthouses, kind as night shift nurses. They are not trying to conquer anything. They are trying to answer. The universe speaks in its slow, careful way, and they match its calm. In their hands, the small weight of coffee cools. In their thoughts, the weight of wonder warms. Soon, rehearsal. Soon, the careful walkthrough that turns hope into muscle memory. But for now, there is listening. The data keeps coming, a quiet stream that does not boast. A whisper that offers presence more than proof. A note that says only, I am here. Are you? And if humanity can listen together, if voices across mountains and oceans can hold the same silence at the same time, perhaps there will be a message to send back, a gentle reply taught by the night itself. The air in the room seems clearer. Faces, lit by screens like tiny nebulae, soften. Someone scribbles a last time mark. Another closes their notebook with a thumb resting in the crease, unwilling to lose the place. The Anomaly completes its pass and slides beyond the horizon of their instruments, not gone, only elsewhere. The room does not cheer. It breathes. The glow fades from the monitors, but in the fading, a question remains. Bright and simple as a comet's tail, what quiet truth has just brushed our sky, and what other truth waits? Hidden, just beyond the edge of this gentle dark. They stand in the dark like quiet sentinels, tall shapes against a sky the color of deep water. Wind moves across the plain. Clouds drift. Floodlights paint the launch pads in a soft glow, and the metal skin of each rocket drinks that light, calm and pale. From far off, you might think the scene is paused. It is not paused. It is quiet the way a breath is quiet drawn in, held, waiting for an answer. A voice counts, steady and low. It does not act like a drum. It is more like a lullaby for engines that have not yet woken. Inside the service towers, guidance systems come alive with a faint hum. Gyros spin. Cold pumps test their loops. On screens, crisp lines of code blink with the rhythm of heartbeat monitors. The range is green. The sky is clear enough. The plan, tested and retested, has one goal that feels like a promise: to meet Venus along a precise trajectory, to release microprobes into the planet's luminous haze, and to follow their faint call in real time, like tracing a whisper across a field. Across the world, a constellation of ground stations blinks on. Antennas tilt. Dishes turn. It looks like a galaxy cluster spread over continents tracking domes. Fiber lines, watchful teams in rooms where night and day blend into one long shift. A telescope array settles into position. A spectrograph warms, ready to read light the way a reader follows a line of text. A simple belief ties them all together. The unknown does not vanish when you look at it with care. Sometimes it grows brighter. The countdown moves without hurry. 10 minutes. 5. The rockets vent pale curls of vapor that drift like thin clouds around their feet. Somewhere, a notebook rests open on a console. In it, a line drawn by someone a long afternoon. Dawn Terminator target area. The Dawn Terminator is where night hands the world of Venus today. A narrow curve where shadows thin and light brings out hidden shapes. The Anomaly has been predicted to appear there, near that changing line. An unexplained signal where sunlight and darkness shake hands. Engineers speak in calm phrases, each syllable a stone laid into a path. Stage 1 ready. Stage 2 pressurized. Guidance nominal. Weather within limits. A small model of the flight path sits on a screen. Earth, the arc into space. A swing by the sun's steady light, and then Venus waiting in its own thick veil. The probes are tiny travelers, each no bigger than a backpack, each holding instruments packed like organs in a chest. They are built to breathe cloud, to taste acid droplets, to read a storm with a quiet tongue. 0 comes the way a sunrise comes soft first, then strong. Engines bloom. Not a roar in this telling, but a rising sea of sound, rounded at the edges, more felt than heard. The towers release. The rockets lift, slow as thoughtful gestures, and the night steps back to make room. Fire pours down, orange and pale gold. Yet the mood stays calm, no fireworks, no shock. Just work, done well and precise, pushing upward. From the observation ridge, you could hold out your hand and feel the air press against your palm. You could watch the flame taper as the rockets climb. Booster separation happens like a sigh. The pieces fall away and fade into darkness, their work complete. The second stage takes over, and the craft leans into the curve of orbit, then the path beyond. On the ground, the voice of the countdown shifts to the voice of flight. Guidance is good. Trajectory is true. The room does not cheer in loud bursts. It breathes. People sit straighter. Someone takes off their glasses, wipes them, puts them back on. The glow on their faces looks like starlight. In flight, the solar wind brushes the hull, a steady breath from the sun. Panels unfold, catching light the way leaves open to sky. Instruments wake. The magnetometer clicks into its rhythm. The spectrograph checks a calibration lamp, then looks outward. A tiny camera faces the stars, finds familiar patterns, and tells the guidance system where forward lives in the dark. A radio warms into a whisper and sends a steady chain of telemetry. Position, speed, temperature, heartbeat. All of this is present tense. All of it is happening now in a cradle of silence. But the story also remembers. In the past, small teams in quiet labs gathered around mock-ups. They fit the probes with heat shields, thin as dragonfly wings. They argued gently about entry angles, cloud chemistry, and the way droplets might cling to sensor mouths. They set up electric fields in glass chambers, trying to copy the storm inside Venus's air. They learned that memory can guide a hand that reaches toward the unknown. They learned that hope likes good math. The anomaly itself has a short history, written in clues. A faint blip in a radio pass years ago. A curve that did not fit the model of winds. A chemical hint that appeared in one spectrum, vanished, and then taunted the data with a near repeat. Nothing solid enough to claim. Nothing weak enough to forget. It sat in minds like a tune you cannot name. The new plan was simple in shape, yet rich in detail. Meet the planet at just the right hour, near the dawn terminator, when shadows and light blend into soft relief. Release the probes into that luminous haze, the region where clouds lift and form long waves, and ask them to listen more than they speak. Days pass the way pages turn. The craft coasts, corrects, and coasts again. Sunlight paints the panels a steady silver. Star trackers blink. When the Earth swings out of line with one ground station, another station takes the thread. The net never drops. At night, if you are listening in your own room, you might imagine the spacecraft as a small point moving through a sea of calm. It is not lost. Its path is a sentence written very slowly, each word placed with care. As Venus grows from a star to a disk, the calm changes. It does not break, it deepens. Teams switch to shorter shifts. Coffee cools untouched. A room-sized map of the target plane glows with a faint grid. The flight director speaks in a voice that sounds like a friendly guide on a night road. We'll cross the Terminator rim at local dawn. Instruments prime at T-90 minutes. Probe release at T-30. Entry windows are tight. Remember, the wind shear is steep. But our numbers are good. The planet ahead is beautiful and unreadable, a bronze pearl wrapped in cloud. The clouds are not soft like Earth's. They are dense, bright, and full of storm. Waves ripple along their tops in long curves, like dunes shaped by a hidden breath. Lightning may live in there, sudden and brief. The probes are designed to meet that reality little boats meant for a harsh sea. Their shells will heat and then cool. Their small propellers will push against thick air. Their microscopes and spectrographs will sip the cloud and tell stories in data. Approach is a series of gentle actions. The main craft adjusts its role. Angles the high-gain antenna toward Earth, and test is the downlink. It opens the bay where the microprobes nest together. Inside, each probe blinks a small green light like a calm heartbeat. The computer checks the timers. Ground teams line up contingencies in neat rows. If the wind exceeds this, do that. If the signal fades below that, switch modes. If thermal rises past a certain point, shorten the sampling sweep. Then the Anomalies window nears. This is the moment that has lived in meetings and dreams. The expectation is simple. An unexplained signature, not owned by noise, not born of misunderstanding. A signal that says, there is something you did not model. Telemetry begins to whisper a shape. Nothing bold, just a tilt in the data. a curve that leans where a straight line was expected. It whispers yes, and the room's breath catches. It whispers yes again, and the hands near the console stay calm because they must. And then, as softly as dawn can close behind a cloud, the whisper slides into hush. Silence is not nothing. In science, silence is a kind of reply. It says, come closer. It says, you were near. Try again with better ears. The decision is clear, and it is not rushed. The probes must breathe the storm. They must go where the signal lived for a moment, where the dawn edge is thin and the sky stirs. Release commands cue. A small clock on the screen counts down with a color that deepens one shade at a time. The flight director speaks once more, light and steady. Release on my mark. The mark arrives like a leaf touching water. The probes drop and fan out in a soft geometry. Their small engines wake with gentle buzzes, not unlike the sound of insects in a summer field. Heat shields turn to face the oncoming air. Guidance aligns itself with stars and then with the planet's horizon. The main craft tilts again, tucking the antenna squarely toward Earth, drawing a tight line between the storm and the listeners waiting across half a world. Entry begins. Friction lights the edges of each small shell. Temperatures rise, then stabilize. The probes push through a cloud deck that looks smooth from orbit, but feels like layered ocean inside. Droplets patter against their skins. Spectrographs open their throats to taste. Microphones lean toward thunder that may or may not speak. Electric sensors lift their feelers for the faintest charge, counting sparks like distant meteors. Up above, the carrier craft swings along the terminator. Its instruments watch the tops. Of the clouds an oblique light, where texture stands out like handwriting pressed into paper. The spectrograph reads the dawn, looking for strange colors, odd dips, clues of rare chemistry. On Earth, dishes hold fast. Data begins to thread between them. Rows of numbers, clean bytes riding light. Analysts, trained for this, let the stream wash over them. They do not jump at single hints. They look for patterns that have the shape of truth. The first readings show what was expected. Sulfuric acid tails, thick aerosols, fast winds that circle the planet like a river trapped in a round bed. A baseline is drawn. Then a tiny rise. Then another not in the same place, not in the same way, but similar enough to make a mind lean forward. The anomaly might be here, or it might be wearing a new mask. No one declares. No one claims. The room remains a lake. Before dawn, holding its surface smooth, letting each ripple tell its own tale. You listen too, if you want. You imagine the storm like a chorus in a language you do not speak. The probes breathe in and report in tiny bursts, as if they must take their own careful pauses to rest. The carrier shifts to keep the link aligned. A clock on Earth meets a clock around Venus, and for a small stretch of time, everything is in step. It feels fragile and timeless together, like many good things. Hours stretch. Daylight thickens. The Terminator moves on, but the memory of it stays in the data, a shadowed slope in numbers. When a probe drifts lower than planned, it uses a brief push to climb back into the desired band. Another adjusts its sensor angle to face a streak of cloud that looks like a breaking wave. Small corrections accumulate into grace. The ground teams speak less and watch more. Sometimes the best action is attention. What the messenger might be, if there is a messenger at all, remains unsaid. It could be a pattern in the way lightning travels. It could be a dance of molecules that only happens when light first touches cloud. It could be nothing from outside and everything from within, a rhythm that belongs to the planet's own slow heart. If it is more, it will say so later, in the careful folding of graphs, in a shared meeting where quiet ideas learn to stand. Now, as the craft glides on and the probes work inside their bright sea, the story returns to breath. The rockets that rose like sentinels are memory now, The wind at the launch site moved on. The voice that counted has gone quiet because the counting is complete. In their place, there is the steady presence of a ship in starlight, a handful of instruments opening like flowers to the dawn, and a net of listeners on Earth who hold the line. Night arrives somewhere else in the world. Rooms dim. Screens soften. The teams continue steady and sure. The data will be sifted. The curve will be traced. The whisper that faded will be sought with new care, as if it left a footprint the size of a grain of sand. In the sky near Venus, the probes move like careful bees inside a pale hive. They breathe the storm and report what they learn. Outside, if you look up, you will see nothing of this with your eyes. But the work is there, painted in a quiet spectrum, carried on radio light. And as the hours fold into one another, the glow around the distant planet softens, a drifting shadow against a bright world. The silence deepens, yet hidden in that silence is something waiting to be understood. They send the smallest of messengers first. Microprobes, light as seeds, fall through the gentle veil of the planet's upper sky. They do not roar. They drift and listen. Their thin antennae quiver as the air around them changes charge and taste. Each one turns a little, finding its path like a feather settling toward a quiet floor. Down below, the world is wrapped in a pale glow, a blanket of fog and cloud folded into slow, endless spirals. Electric fields tremble. The probes feel it like a whisper on a wire. Their instruments hum with low power, patient, and precise. They carry spectrographs that bloom like small gardens of color, opening petals of data in the dark. Cameras look outward, but also inward, toward the chemistry written in the cloud. Ions jump as if woken by thunder far away. Charged dust clings, then lets go, then clings again, a dance of tiny touches that repeats and repeats. What first seemed forbidden now sharpens into form. A pattern the scientists were warned not to trust begins to resolve. It is not a trick of noise. It is not a wish made by tired minds. Lightning-born ions trace threads through the air. Dust grains become moving beads on invisible wires. Molecules bump and switch partners, and then switch back, keeping time with a rhythm set by fields no one had measured this clearly before. The microprobes call home with this music, the hiss of plasma, the faint tap of charged collisions, the soft chime of light split into lines. The anomaly is real. The word falls in the control room like a feather and like a bell. It is not life. It is not prophecy. It is a precise physics finally seen as it is. Not a ghost, not a rumor, an ancient traveler given a name at last. It has always been here, moving through cloud and storm, writing its trail in ions and sparks. But until now, no one had held the pattern steady long enough to read it. Spectrographs, spread on the screens, show clear bands where before there was blur. Wave by wave, the cloud answers. The scientists had wondered if hope was deceiving them. They had rehearsed how to accept nothing. But the graphs keep blooming. The data holds. Across the room, faces soften. Shoulders lower. A smile breaks, then another, then many. This is fragile relief, not triumph. Everyone knows how easily measurements can hide a trap. They move slowly, checking, testing, asking the small machines to say it again, and then again once more. Outside, the planet's hush wraps the probes like an endless night. The upper air is calm, but deep below, storms braid themselves and unbraid again. One probe feels a rush of charged particles slide past like a river. Another drifts into a zone of gentle static and turns a slow circle, mapping the field around its own small spark. Their path is not straight. Their fall is not a fall but a wandering, guided by physics and luck. In their wake, they leave thin lines of understanding maps drawn in the air, lines no eye can see. On the ground, the team stacks the maps. They look for how the lines cross. They look for where the crossing bends into something new. Patterns grow. Some are familiar storm charge building, then draining. Some are strange motions that seem to tug from below, as if another layer is alive with a different kind of order. Not life, but something like a schedule written by the planet itself. A tide of ions rising and falling on a clock they do not yet know how to read. The unknown traveler has a rhythm. It rises the temperature like a slow drum. It walks along the pressure gradient, careful as a sleepwalker on a ridge. It follows lightning but also leads it, shaping where discharges will reach. In one part of the cloud deck, it arranges dust into chains that break and reform. In another part, it smooths the dust into a drifting sheet that glows with a faint, steady light. These are not signs of a mind. They are signs of rules set long ago by the simple, powerful ways that charge and matter speak to each other. In the library of the control center, a name is written down. It is a label more than a title, a place in a catalog, a word that will sit on a page and point back to all this. The traveler is finally named. The team records the first note of a chorus that will take years to learn. The old questions quiet. New questions arrive. If this is only the first verse, what else waits beneath the storms? The spectrographs bloom again. Intervals change. The colors shift a little, then hold. A single probe rolls slightly as a wave of field sweeps past. Its casing ticks as dust taps it in passing, each tap a small spark. It sends the taps as numbers. The numbers become a map. The map becomes a story. The story, for the first time, is stable enough to tell. And yet the measurements hint at deeper layers. There are signals from below that do not match the upper patterns. They come in slow pulses, like breaths hidden under blankets. The microprobes cannot go there. Not yet. The air grows too thick. The heat rises. The storms knit a barrier of motion that no seed-sized craft could survive. So they orbit within their safe shell and listen to the lower drumbeat. The team notes the beat, marks the timing, and waits. Somewhere below the veil, a secret moves. You are allowed into this quiet. Wide shots of cloud fill the screen, pillowed in silver, their edges soft as sleep. The narrator's voice is low. You feel the scale of it, a world wrapped in weather. A sky that is not empty, but full of tiny charged lives of dust and ion, each obeying simple laws, together making something grand. We watch the probes as they drift. We hear the faint clicks of data. We look, and in looking, we change. Why did we listen? The scientists will say they were curious. They will say they were careful. They will say they had models to test and tools to use. But under those reasons is a gentler truth. They wanted to know who shares this universe, even if that who is not a person or a creature, but a pattern, a chorus, a rule written in light and cloud. They wanted to hear the planet reply, even if the reply was a hush. Listening made them humble. It made them patient. It made them kinder to each other as they waited for the lines to hold. There is a moment in the control room when the air changes. It is not something you can measure. Maybe it's simply the shift from doubt to care. People move slower. They speak softer. The glow of the monitors seems warmer. The storm outside is no less fierce, but inside, the world feels softer, safer, more human. The old fear that the anomaly would vanish loosens its grip. The new awareness that the mystery is real and also not yet complete takes its place. The camera begins to pull back. The probes shrink to sparks. The planet grows into a marble of weather, bands and spirals turning in silence. Starlight paints the upper air. The microprobes keep their watch, small bright insects in a vast lantern. The spectrographs continue to bloom, page after page, a library of colors that will keep the team busy for years. Past discoveries line up in memory. Each one felt final. Each one opened a door. This one is the same. The anomaly, once a rumor, now sits on the table like a simple stone. You can hold it. You can turn it in your hand. You can say what it is not. You can begin to say what it is. But even as you do, you feel the weight of the deeper layers, the pull of the secret below. It is not a threat. It is an invitation. The narrator lowers their voice until it is almost a whisper. The planet breathes. The fields twitch and fade. Dust settles, then rises again. The traveler keeps moving, always itself, always new. The scientists save their files and step into the quiet of the hallway. Some will sleep. Some will not. All will carry the same small light of awe, the kind that steadies a hand and slows a thought. If this is only the first verse, then the chorus is somewhere under the storm line, waiting to be heard. It will take new tools, bolder paths, and another kind of listening. For now, the night is kind. The world turns. The soft glow of the cloud deck dims and brightens. Dims and brightens. A gentle veil moves across the face of the planet, and the instruments listen like open hands. The story does not end. It settles. It breathes. It becomes quiet enough for sleep. The unknown traveler has a name, but names are only the beginning of knowing. The camera keeps drifting outward until even the storms look still. And in that stillness, the silence deepened. Yet hidden in that silence was something waiting to be understood. The camera glides over a sleeping world. City lights blur into a soft veil. Oceans turn like a slow breath. Above it all, the sky holds steady. Starlight travels across unthinkable miles, crosses the dark, and lands on a mirror the size of a room. A telescope waits in the cold. A spectrograph lies open like a careful ear. Paper notebooks, faded at the corners, rest beside blinking screens. This is how Earth speaks back to the cosmos quietly, with tools built by patient hands, with notes made in the hours when most of the planet dreams. In those hours, a small change once rose from the bright clouds of Venus. It was an anomaly, a whisper in the spectrograph's lines. Not a trumpet, not a siren, just a small bend in the starlight reflected from a planet nearby. It drew attention not because it shouted, but because it stayed. It returned night after night, as if asking us to listen better. The signal was a messenger, not a prophecy. It held no fortune-teller's deck, no promise of doom or miracle. It simply said, "Look again. Look longer. Look with a steadier hand." So they did. Astronomers checked instruments, then checked themselves. They remembered how a comet's tail had fooled earlier eyes, how a faulty cable once made a particle seem faster than light. They traced every wire, recalibrated every lens. They wrote down what they saw and what they felt. To wonder, caution, awe. The story of science is not only numbers. It is also the rhythm of attention. The spectrograph, with its thin rainbow of truth, showed the way. Measure, compare, breathe. The lesson did not scold. It encouraged. If the universe is a teacher, it prefers the gentle tap on the shoulder, not the shout across the room. The more we listened, the more the fear thinned out. Wonder took its place. To listen is to slow down. The mind that listens is a mind that sets a careful orbit around the unknown. It doesn't crash. It circles. It takes another pass, shifts the trajectory, and tries again. This is why the telescope sits so still. It knows movement is easier than attention, but attention sees deeper. Clouds move, instruments hum, and the planet turns. But the listening mind stays with the line of light, the faint curve, the patient note. Hope steadies the hand that tightens a bolt at dawn. Data became memory. Memory became pattern. We learned to hold two ideas at once. A signal can be a harbinger without being an omen. It can warn us that our models need mending, that our methods require more care, without predicting anything terrible. The cosmos does not write in headlines. It sketches in drifting shadow and quiet glow. The Venus anomaly asked for better questions, not louder answers. Even as interpretations rose and fell like tides, the practice remained. Check the baseline. Test the air. Remember the last time starlight played a trick. Each note we made, every line in a lab book, every time stamped from a satellite, was a soft promise to the future. We were here, and we paid attention. In paying attention, we began to hear ourselves. Humanity echoes in these instruments. When a spectrograph splits a beam, it also splits our worries from our wishes. What remains is clearer. We are fragile, and we are durable. We are brief, and we are timeless. The light that touches a sensor tonight left its star before our grandparents were born. The same photon can cross a nebula and end its journey on a silver mirror made by hands that once shelled peas at a family table. Listening ties the distant to the near, the eternal to the everyday. You can feel it now, the breath slowing, the room growing warm, the mind settling like snow. History shows the same cadence. We once feared comets as fiery messengers. Later, we traced their paths, learned their ices, watched their tails sweep sunward. We once mapped the planets as wandering lights. Now we choose the words orbit and trajectory with care. The language improved because the listening improved. A spectrograph turned starlight into numbers. Numbers turned into scenes. Scenes turned into calm understanding. When we study an exoplanet's sky and find a hint of water or a trace of haze, we do not announce a miracle. We note a possibility. We place it gently beside earlier notes, like shells lined along a window ledge. And still, the wonder holds. The night deepens. The telescope slews to a new target, and the dome opens to the cold. Somewhere beyond the neighborhood of Venus, a distant star hiccups. Its brightness dips as a small world crosses the face. Just a tiny drop in light, a blink. We call it a transit. The curve looks simple, like a child's drawing. But within it sit the tools of careful listening. The baseline, the outliers, the model that fits best but not perfectly. Another spectrograph waits for the planet to tug the starlight, to shift its color by the slightest shade. It will record a whisper that says, "Here is a world." Not a prophecy, a presence. And presence invites a special kind of rest. We are no longer running to catch a revelation. We are breathing with what is here. The storms drift and settle. The atmosphere of a neighbor swirls and clears, and even if the reading changes tomorrow, the practice remains steady. The cosmos is not a riddle we rush to solve before sleep. It is a room we learn to sit in. The hum of the control room, the soft clack of keys, the pencil scratching dates in the margin, these become the lullaby. Knowledge does not arrive like thunder. It settles like a gentle snow over a warm room. Some nights, the listening turns inward. A researcher closes a notebook and hears the distant fan of the server rack. In that small sound lives the whole arc of the species, a fire lit in a cave, a lens ground on a farmhouse bench, a mirror shipped through mountain passes, a graph drawn by a student who once thought the sky was only decoration. The universe is not changed by our attention, but we are. We meet our own patience and find it sufficient. We meet our own hope and find it steady. The spectrograph does not sing, but it carries the tune of who we are when we are at our best. Tomorrow will bring more signals, some clean, some confusing. Another anomaly will rise and ask for a steadier eye. We will test it, and we will test ourselves. If the rabbit of fear tries to run, the tortoise of wonder will call it back. We will remember how the Venus whisper taught us to open the question rather than close it. We will place the new data beside the old and let the gestalt form in its own time. This is the slow magic of science for sleep. The mind rests because the method holds. The method holds because the listening is honest. Now the dome begins to close. Motors murmur. The telescope bows as if thanking the sky. On screens, the final spectra of the night line up like gentle barcodes, each a record of a star's breath. The planet keeps turning. Oceans hush the shores. In the stratosphere, wind writes temporary letters no one will read. Across the solar system, Venus turns too, wrapped in its bright clouds, holding its heat and its puzzles. The anomaly is not a haunting. It is a note in a longer song. And the song is about attention, not alarm. You feel the weight leave your chest. In the whisper of stars, humanity hears itself curious, small, timeless. The words we use, orbit, comet, nebula, exoplanet, are simple tools. Like the telescope, the spectrograph, the patient notes. They do not claim too much. They do just enough. They point, they hold, they invite. And in that invitation, something gentle arrives. Hope that does not rush, wonder that does not shout. We breathe with the turning earth, with the drifting storms, with the settling snow of understanding. Beyond the window, a thin cloud slides across the moon and keeps going, an ancient traveler on a local journey. The night air cools. Somewhere, a small green light on a server blinks and keeps time with your heartbeat. The mystery does not press. It cradles. It leaves room for dreams. One quiet question remains, a soft glow on the horizon that does not wake the house. If the clouds can sing, what other worlds hum in the dark? The glow fades toward morning, and in its fading, it carries a promise that lingers in every watcher's mind. A soft blue twilight leans across the world, and high above it, Venus glows bright as a silver coin pressed into a velvet sky. She is the evening star, the ancient traveler that appears when day loosens its grip and the first quiet of night begins. City roofs dim. Desert stones keep their heat. Snowfields take on a faint, glassy shine. Through windows and along hilltops, people lift their eyes for one more look. The film settles into this hush, letting the light breathe. Nothing hurries. The horizon keeps its slow exhale, and the planet holds steady like a lantern that remembers every road. On the screen, a telescope draws its circle around the bright point. The focus turns and the glare becomes a disk, cream and ash, crossed by cloud veils. The spectrograph hums. Data lines rise and fall like the tide. They're a signature in the light, familiar now, once an anomaly. It is mapped, tracked, compared. The early nights were full of questions, and they still are, but the shape of uncertainty has changed. Where the unknown once felt sharp, it now feels like a gentle puzzle that admits many answers and asks us to rest between them. The anomaly is not exhausted. It is simply no longer a stranger. Narration folds over the image in a low voice, the kind that respects the quiet instead of breaking it. In the past, explorers thought Venus might be a twin Earth, a second garden. Probes later fell through the clouds and found a world of heat and pressure, a place too fierce for open oceans or fragile breath. Those discoveries belonged to yesterday's brave machines, their metal bones softened by acid, their signals fading like sparks in rain. Yet even now, even with all we have learned, Venus is more than a list of numbers. It is memory and mirror. It changes us by how it shines. Tonight, sensors listen again. The anomaly, the subtle messenger in the starlight, replies in patterns that drift rather than shout. Think of a wind chime swaying very slightly on a still porch. The note is calm, but it keeps returning. Orbit after orbit, the signal sketches a trajectory of comfort. The models market out variations in the upper clouds, shifting aerosols, waves shaped by solar wind and planetary rhythm. None of it is a warning. All of it is a whisper. The cosmos is speaking softly, as if careful not to wake someone sleeping in the next room. A slow camera move glides across a control room. Consoles glow like small moons. On one screen, Venus brightens. On another, comet paths thread through a dark map. On another, the glitter of a distant exoplanet wobbles by a fraction of a pixel. These are quiet labors, calm and precise. Trajectory lines curve as if written by a careful hand. The team breathes in a shared tempo, and time dilates into the measure of orbits. Past discoveries are remembered here, old printouts pinned to cork, a battered notebook with a drawn nebula, a photograph of the first dish antenna that turned to listen. The room is a barn for light, sheltering the harvest of distant suns. Out in the sky, the telescopes continue to collect their thin rain of photons. A spectrograph resolves colors the eye can't see, breaking the beam into secrets. Molecules leave fingerprints. The data does not sing loudly. It hums, patterns repeat. The anomaly arcs across the graphs in a way the team has begun to recognize, like the silhouette of a friend arriving over a hill. It is not proof of life, nor proof of threat. It is simply proof of patience, of how the universe rewards the long look. The narrator speaks of future missions. They are sketched now as clean shapes and neat acronyms, but later they will be real ships with real dust on them. They will return here and to other worlds. They will drift into Venus's thick night and chart the clouds. They will pass near asteroids with surfaces like charcoal and salt. They will coast beside comets that shed tails of ice, turning sunlight into breath. Each mission will carry questions like lanterns in a slow procession. They will not try to flood the dark. They will light only what they need to see, at the pace a heartbeat allows. You, watching, are invited into that walk. The film does not push. It guides. It says, breathe. Feel how the stars steady your thoughts. Imagine the solar wind, a river without shores, brushing tiny grains of dust until they glow. Picture the strange temperature of deep night, the crisp and the comfort. The way silence is not empty, but full of nearby things you can almost hear. Gentle speculation rises like mist. In the future, we may find that Venus's soft patterns are shaped by waves rolling through its high cloud decks, or by rhythms in its super-rotating winds. We may learn that the anomaly is a chorus of natural voices that were there all along, waiting for our instruments to grow calm enough to listen. The film shifts to a wide view. Earth below, horizon curved, thin air shining blue, and beyond that, the black that is not black, but layered with faint drifting shadow. Venus is a bright pin over the evening limb. In one corner, a tiny graphic shows the orbits of nearby exoplanets, their years counted in days, their suns small and red, their paths so close that twilight would never truly leave them. We will go and mine first, with telescopes that sip light from star and world together. And we will listen for hidden songs there too. Some exoplanets will reveal atmospheres glowing with sodium or water vapor. Some will show dust caught in rings. Some will be bare and hot and stern. Each world will be itself. Each will teach us how many ways there are to be a planet. The pace remains gentle. Here, a slow pan of a meteorite slice, smooth as glass, crossed with copper lines like frozen lightning. There, an asteroid spins, throwing a faint, dusty veil. A comet's tail spreads into the camera like the brush of a great painter, then thins into space. The narrator's tone stays low and kind. Comets carry old water and older stories. Asteroids remember the time before worlds. Meteors tap the roof of night with soft knuckles, saying, "We are still here." The universe is ancient, but it has not finished speaking. A memory of earlier chapters flickers without words. The first time the anomaly appeared, the rush, the careful doubt. The way maps grew crowded and then clear. Now, with data stacked like quiet books, The team understands more about the rhythm, the ebb, and the bloom. They know the limits of their instruments. They accept the patience the sky demands. They choose the long approach catalog, repeat, compare, rest, because rest is part of knowing. In the small hours, the control room goes dim, the screens dimmer still, and yet the work continues in the background like a tide that never stops touching the shore. The film offers a small, human moment. A technician steps onto the rooftop for a breath of cold air. She looks up. No grass, no code, only the simple sight of Venus clearing a roofline. Streetlights make halos. A far airplane blinks a slow pulse. Somewhere below, a dog barks and then goes quiet. The sky holds. The viewer might feel this too, the way a single bright point can steady a day, can draw the mind into a wider circle where worries lose their edges. The camera lingers on her face as she listens to nothing and hears everything. She closes her eyes and opens them again, and the planet is still there, unchanged, patient. Back inside, the storyline returns to the data, not to complicate it, but to show the care. Timestamps, calibration frames, a quiet note from the night shift. Pattern persists, amplitude stable. The anomaly is not a harbinger of danger. It is a reminder that mystery does not always come with thunder. Sometimes it comes as a steady pulse, a cosmic whisper that says, "You can learn this. You have time." The maps are updated. The model runs end with cones of possibility that shine like soft beams through fog. Nothing final. Nothing closed. Doors are left ajar for later minds. As the evening deepens, the film's music thins to almost nothing. Just a held tone and a faint drift of strings. The narrator makes the promise that matters. We will return. Not with answers alone, but with better questions. We will return to Venus and to the places where starlight wavers and tells us an exoplanet is there. We will return to comets and asteroids, to the pale arcs where solar wind brushes the fields of tiny charged dust. We will ask for stories with instruments built to listen rather than shout. We will be, as best we can, patient. In a final sequence, Venus slides lower. The sky turns from velvet to ink. The silver coin dims, but it does not vanish. It simply hands the night over to deeper stars. The narrator's voice fades into a whisper of names nebula. Orbit, telescope, spectrograph like beads slipped back into a pouch. The words are simple, and they rest in the air after they are spoken. You are invited to hold them as you drift. Exoplanet, comet, asteroid, star. They are small boats. They float you into sleep. What hidden songs wait in other skies? The film does not answer. It only shows how to listen. Breathe in. Breathe out. Imagine light traveling for years to reach the back of your eyes, then sliding into memory. Imagine the long curve of a trajectory, steady and faithful, carrying a tiny craft toward a quiet rendezvous. Picture the moment of first sight, the instrument settling, the signal beginning like the first note of a lullaby you remember from childhood. Hold that thought gently. It will be there when you wake. The screen now is mostly dark. A thin rim of Earth, a thread of blue, a single planet lighting the edge. In this closing calm, the unknown is not a threat. It is a cradle for wonder, a place where awe sleeps lightly and wakes at the softest touch. The night closes with silence, soft and steady. And yet in the dim, in the long hush between breaths, something remains, the sense of another message forming. Not urgent, not loud, just near, waiting for patience. And for ears tuned to the quiet where secrets learn to speak.